Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VML Venus and Mercury League. I'm Skybilz here, joined by Kuro. So, really quickly here, I do want to remind everyone that we are sponsored by Wizards of the Coast and Good Luck High Five. We are a 10-week long MTGA league which showcases the talents of amazing people of marginalized genders within the Magic community. We have 128 players total. This is our biggest ever season number 10. Totally read that as X in the intro, by the way. Players have been divided into 16 divisions, and play will be done in a round robin for 7 weeks before cutting to a playoff of the top 32. This season, it's a clean cut. The top two of each division will make it. This is week number 4. And if you're interested in joining next season, please follow at VML MTG on Twitter. And of course, we have our VML swag as well at MTG Pro Shop. This is the 2022-2023 competitive season. And for the first time ever, you can fight your way to your local regional championship and the Pro Tour through playing the VML. There will be 3 seasons of the VML this competitive year, which will lead into our brand new capstone event, the VML Championship. The top 8 players from each season will qualify to the VML Championship, which will be a 24-player invite-only event. The top 2 players at the VML Championship will receive an invitation to the following Magic the Gathering Pro Tour. So again, shout outs and thank you to Wizards of the Coast for those invitations. With that being said, Kiro, how are you doing? It's wonderful to have you here tonight.
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm happy to be back to casting. I'm happy to be here. I can't wait to see the matchups, especially since with all the bans, I'm sure we're going to discuss that momentarily. But oh boy, State of Standard is changing. It's the changing, and we're going to see an effect too.
Yeah, not to be mistaken with last week where folks were kind of thinking about it, but then we see the breakdown and Rakdos mid-range is there again. And it's like, sure, sure, sure. This week is the first week, though, as Kira was saying, where we are playing by those bans. So, as a reminder to everyone, the cards that we are currently playing without, as we look into the breakdown, you'll see what's missing here. Ah, yes, Rakdos mid range here. So, Reckoner Bankbuster banned, Fable of the Mirror Breaker banned, Invoke Despair banned. Gee, I wonder what we're going to be seeing less of here. And Kira, what do you think of this breakdown based on those bans?
Well, it's been a while since I've seen a pie chart like this not include Rakdos or Grixis midrange, I'll tell you that much. And it's
Mhm.
really actually quite interesting just how far Black has moved away from being in this pie chart at all. We see it in Esper mid-range, we see it in Orzhov mid-range, and I guess technically it's there in the 5-color amp deck, but really it's blue, white, and red that are seeing some play. Heck, we even have Selesnya enchantments there as a deck that people are playing as an option for green. I do think that we're seeing a little bit more color diversity here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you had mentioned the color diversity because, again, we weren't seeing much of it with the Rakdos mid range as well. Of course, the colors of the pie we're going to be paying attention to the most this week. Esper Legends here at 25. Again, for folks that don't know, Esper is black, white, and blue. And again, a lot of legendaries here. We have our Plaza Heroes that has remained unbanned. That was a suspected one, but it was not banned overall. Followed by, of course, good old aggro here, Azorius Soldiers, Mono Red Aggro. I love how those are lumped together here in the pie chart because those are the big aggros here. 5-color ramp, we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. Celestia enchantments, as Kara is saying as well. And of course, that Orzhov mid range, which is kind of similar to that mono white mid range to control that we've kind of been seeing. We've been seeing several of those lists floating around. So again, we have those. Also, don't count out the fringe decks. Always want to pay attention. Always make for fun feature matches here. So I'm very excited tonight to see how we are post ban and how the matches will unfold.
Absolutely. Just seeing this Esper Legends deck and none of the deck got axed at all. It makes total sense why it's dominating right now.
All right. So I believe we do have some matches to go tonight. Let's get in the game here. I believe first we have May versus Looter Scooter here. So again, we have May here. As for Legends, we're going to be talking about this a lot tonight. So folks, just be prepared for that. We have Thalia, which is always going to be big, especially when we are taxing stuff. Rafine, again, everybody's favorite. Esper Legend, and of course, Plaza of Heroes again, a card folks were surprised that wasn't banned. What do you think of this list overall?
Well, as always, like I like to look at the number of counter spells in the deck just to see whether it's a proactive or a reactive list, and I'm not really seeing much action in terms of counter magic. It is basically trying to take value with all the different legendary creatures in the format. I think there's some Urtais in there, but other than that, the only counter magic I see is the disdainful stroke and negates in the side. So, what does that mean? It means that instead we're going to play some creatures and turn them sideways, which is a little bit weird for a blue-white deck in history. But I mean, there you go. Like you said, we have Thalias that make it more difficult. We have obviously the Shieldreds and the Raffines that are just absolutely phenomenal value engines. I think that some Skrells there and some Denics, of course. And you just got a lot going on here. I think it's just a solid list.
I agree. And we were talking about this in the pre-show real quick before we get on to the next deck list. We have, what are the key cards for you in this matchup? I have to dodge every wrath, May says, and then maybe I can win. So again, we were talking about the strength of Sunfall lately. Maybe something we want to take a look at tonight as we go to May's opponent is going to be Looter Scooter. And we are seeing Azorius control. So we were just talking about this matchup, Kuro. Go ahead and share your thoughts. They were very insightful.
All right. We're finally covering a blue-white control deck. Or I guess I am covering a blue-white control deck after a really long time. Blue-white control is one of my favorite archetypes of all time. It is the archetype that I play all the time, and so I'm very, very happy to be covering blue-white control. Obviously, like I said before, looking at the different counter magics is obviously very important. We have two. No, we have. I believe that's two syncopates. We have those two make disappears. We have that one spell pierce, and then two washaways, which is an extremely ambitious counterspell because it is very, very specific in its use. At 1 mana, you can counter things that are not cast from the hand. The card draw engine, of course, we have pretty good. And we have a lot of wanderers. We have a lot of removal spells. Those wipes are very powerful, and I'm excited to see those sunfalls in action because that is a card that I have not seen a lot of yet. I've seen it here and there, but it's a pretty fantastic board wipe, especially against this Esper Legends deck. If it's able to get down a Sunfall, not only do you get to wipe all their things, you don't even get your Denics back, but you also make a nice blocker that can potentially swing through a Shieldred. Um, we have some really fantastic cards in the sideboard. We have some more board wipes because why not? We have some Hullbreaker Horrors. We got some Chrome Host Seed Sharks, which are so interesting because on the one hand it feels awkward with board wipes, but on the other hand you see some really interesting action with cards like Memory Deluge or other counter magics. So I'm really really excited to see this matchup play out because it could go either way.
I'm glad you mentioned the Seed Shark really quickly because some folks see it as like the reincarnation of Shark Typhoon. That's not really a Shark Typhoon, but that is a
Yeah.
super exciting card. With that being said, let's go to the action here. All right, so let's see here. Ooh, so again, as a note, those lands, like the legendary lands, like Adawara, think of those as spells. That is a good way to like take a look at the hand here. So we do have Adawara, Double Plaza. We have some Myrna action going on here, Shelly. And on the other side here, there was a little bit of a mulligan here by Looter Scooter. So we have some early counter magic as well as a Memory Deluge that can help get card advantage back.
Yeah, I think the mulliganing as control is always rough because you want as many cards as possible, but you have to hit your land drops. The bona fide strategy of control is you advance your game state by playing lands. You don't play creatures, you don't play your artifacts usually. So you need to play lands. If you aren't playing lands, if you miss your land drops, you are going to lose. And this is especially true in a control mirror. And the Esper deck can play like a control deck because they do get that card advantage. Um, yeah.
All right, 2 lands apiece here, discarding to draw with Rona, something that Rona does best here. And again, no additional cost, just tapping Rona for doing so. Drops an island here, and Mayor is looking at one of the stronger early plays, Thalia Guardian Ethereum, but looks like it's going to be possibly countered here. There's a hover over and make disappear. Depends on what Looter Scooter thinks of Thalia, and probably what all control decks think about Thalia. Make that disappear.
Yeah, the main problem here is that the control deck has a Spar's headquarters right now, which would normally allow them to cast Wash Away. But unfortunately, because Ludoscooter is playing these planes to make Lay Down Arms work, Ludoscooter has to play these planes that enter tapped to get that value. So this Lay Down Arms could work, but the question is, do you use it on Rona or do you use it on a future threat like a Raffine or even a Shieldred? And that Igunjo not being in planes is actually a really huge problem. But playing the Spars now means you can play Memory Deluge next turn.
Well, asking for a Ganjo, you get another Ganjo, but the good news is that is able to be cycled. Speaking of cycling, we have another discard effect here by Rona, and that's going to be a Denic off the top. A Denic, we're going to see if that is going to be discarded as it can be played from the yard here. But nope, as you were saying, Kuro, the Aganjo, not quite good for this situation.
Yeah, for May, Iganjo is just a plains. That is not even a plains. Like, Ludescooter is not going to attack with anything that's going to die to Iganjo, and if Ludescooter is attacking with Wanderer tokens, she's probably winning the game. And so Iganjo is not really that useful. So it's not a very good tempo bit. And oof, that is an interesting draw.
Yeah, Ganjo
Oh.
goes down here. So now there's a decision to be made. Counter magic, lay, thirst for discovery, memory deluge. There's a lot going on here, but is it enough to hold up the siege in which May has on the board right now? May has a pretty big board advantage right now. Pass of the turn by Looter Scooter. May top decking the dual land. I believe that is a slow land here. Rona again going to discard then draw then discard. And now, Aurora going down, and we're going to see some Adeline here. A little more of an aggressive approach here by May.
Yeah, I think May is definitely playing around the make disappears for sure because May could have played the Shield or Lester mode, decided to play Denic, and now is playing Adeline with 2 mana up. May is very clearly playing around this make disappear that does not exist, but it's good because the thing is if that Shieldred was countered, with make disappear, that tempo swing is ridiculous. If this Adeline was countered, I mean, not that May had Adeline at the time, but if this
Mm.
Adeline had been countered, that's a problem. However, Ludo Scooter is taking advantage of this because now she can just sit there and go, all right, let's see if we can get Sunfall.
Yes, that is May down the middle. Luder Scooter down to 16 now. Memory Deluge. We are waiting to see what Luder Scooter's looking at here. And that is a Wandering Emperor island off the top as well. So
Yeah.
now Looter Scooter goes to lay down arms, which leaves a counter magic play and or a wandering emperor play of a very interesting approach here by Looter Scooter.
Yeah, May is definitely very scared of this make disappear. If I were May right now, I'd be very nervous to play that Shieldred because even though your May is getting in with for 3 damage, it's just it's not going to be enough if this Rona doesn't attack to put enough pressure on the control. However, this Rona, ooh, that is a interesting play. I like it though.
Yes, we see a transformed Rona into a wandering emperor.
Oh,
Looter
that is so
Scooter opting to -2 here, which will likely be on the Rona, and it is. But what an aggressive play by Mater using the Rona and extra Rona in hand makes sense. But now back over to Looter Scooter, who has gained a little bit of leverage onto the battlefield via the Wandering Emperor.
so interesting. I would actually be tempted to play Thirst for Discovery here because Ludescooter has that island in the hand, and drawing another land that is potentially a plains would be way more useful than having that island right now. I think having that wash away though is too vital, so it might not be the play. But getting to that memory deluge mana is definitely where Ludescooter wants to be right now. That is the most important thing.
Second Shieldred off the top for me as that gets washed away by a Looter Scooter, but Rona back on the field. 2 spells down. We also have a lay down arms that was used on Denic earlier, resulting in an exile, no longer able to play Denic for its replacement cost, its disturb cost in the yard here. Looter Scooter down the middle with the 2/2 token. It connects 29 for May. And now Looter Scooter sitting on a thirst and a memory deluge in the yard. May opting to put down a second Shieldred here. So, what are you looking for if you're a Looter Scooter right now, Kuro?
Oh gosh, an untapped land, honestly. Or some way to kill the Shieldred. A Wandering Emperor would be great. An Eternal Wanderer would be even better. I would be tempted to probably keep the Otawara so that you'd be able to Memory Deluge. Keeping the farmhand is really tempting because you do get that plains, which is actually really nice for a possible future late on arms. Getting that Memory Deluge down though is really important. So that island is pretty nice because now Luduskur does not have to play Otawara, and Memory Deluge gets around the Shieldred. Um, the only issue is if May top decks an Urtai, I think, which could be very problematic.
May tap decks a go for the throat, something that I'm
Mm.
sure, should Looter Scooter be playing any Black Source, would be very thrilled to have, considering the Shieldred on the field. But it's looking like right now, May with the big board advantage, Looter Scooter with the big hand advantage, though, with that Deluge being in the hand. And as Kuro said very well, Memory Deluge does get around Shieldred's effect. That could have an effect on how this game progresses.
Yeah, it all of this now depends on whatever the memory deluge is going to get because May has absolutely no way to deal with a farewell, absolutely no way to deal with a sunfall. So Ludicrous just had to hit one of those board wipes. I did see that there was a Teferi. I don't see the rest of the cards, but I would be looking for a sunfall and one other piece of card draw. And there's a farewell. Nice, fantastic draw.
Yes, certainly. If you're Looter Scooter, this is the dream hand right now. Look at this trio of control cards right now. We have the Farewell, you have Teferi Temporal Pilgrim, you have Eternal Wanderer. All things that you want to see if you are in Looter Scooter's position right now. What a great memory deluge.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to farewell here because I think Lucifer was thinking about Eternal Wanderer potentially plussing on Shieldred, which denies May the life gain, but makes Lucifer still take damage. And the thing is every turn you let Shieldred out as control, if you get to like 4 or less, it's really problematic because now you have to deal with a top deck Shieldred just being a shock. You can't pause of heroes, of course, because it is not destroy and is not target. And this Eternal Wanderer is coming down next turn. This Rafine is probably fine, but it's going to be difficult to get around this.
Yes, Looter Scooter still at 6. Rafine out on the field. Now, Teferi or Wanderer, Looter Scooter is in the tank a little bit, thinking about the possibilities that each walker brings to the field currently. And again, being at 6 life, that is a very dangerous position to be in. So Looter Scooter opting to take the Teferi here. What do you think of this choice, Kuro?
I think it's fine because you're drawing extra cards and you need to draw into something. There's your discovery is fantastic. It makes Teferi go up. And then now May has to make the choice. Do I try to attack Ludisker and kill her? Or do I try to attack the Teferi so I can make sure the Teferi can't pop off? Um, because if Teferi goes off, that is really backbreaking for May. That's an extremely high amount of value. But if it doesn't and it's just a red herring, then Ludisker just wins the game. This is risky play on May's part, however, because not because it could get countered, but because now if Ludoscooter has a board wipe, May has no way to deal with it. And if Ludoscooter had just done normal removal, May also has no way to deal with it. Did you know that Sunfall is a good card?
Sunfall is definitely up there in terms of some of the best utility board wipes out there. And again, Ludicutor opting to keep the Sunfall for same reasons. Also, Eternal Wanderer here. Meanwhile, Teferi continues to tick up. 8 loyalty already for Teferi, which is wild. And now Ludicutor's probably looking at the Sunfall at this moment, going, is this a good moment? Is this a good moment? Yeah, yeah. Owen and Rafine, those are pretty formidable opponents here. So Looter Scooter clearing the field here, May top decking an Adeline here, which is interesting given the situation. Again, pretty big defensive stance there. But keep in mind that Teferi, with each turn that ticks, that 2/2 token is going to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, this is the stage of control where Ludoscooter has won this game. The only way Ludoscooter could lose is either intentionally throwing or making a mistake so huge that May would be able to capitalize on it. Because Ludoscooter is able to basically push those planeswalkers forward. It's kind of like in chess when you push your pawn forward when nothing is protecting it or trying to threaten it. If you just push your pawn forward every single turn as not being addressed, you're going to lose the game. And this Wanderer is going to push a token forward every single turn, or even exile Adelman, and just wait for it to use that later on another better target. Yep,
And
that makes
that
sense.
is going to be game number 1. Looter Scooter winning. And as we move into the sideboard now, if you are in the position of May, the Esper Legends deck, what are you thinking you need to do to offset that snowballing effect we just saw?
Mulligan aggressively to find Thali and Skrull.
Mhm.
That's what I think. Obviously, taking out removal and putting counters is like the step one. However, you also need to mulligan aggressively to make sure that your opening hand actually has ways to deal. Because if your opening hand is Denic Adeline, you're probably not winning that game because Late on Arms just absolutely destroys that hand. You have to get like Thalia or Skulf.
We also saw some additional counter magic get put in there too. We saw some disdainful strokes. We saw some negates in there. So counter magic is another way to help out with those wipe spells here. So now taking a look at Looter Scooter's sideboard here, we see Pinchy. Shout outs to Hullbreaker Horror there. I have to do that for Hayu. That's one of Hayu's favorites there. We also have an additional Teferi. We have some additional counters. We have Hearst for some graveyard shenanigans here. All around, very solid sideboard here for Azorius. So Looter Scooter again going to be going second here. When you're in the position of Azorius control, what are some important things to remember for the early game going second? That's a very dangerous position to be in if you're in the control deck.
Yeah, more expensive counter spells like Wash Away and Syncopate are actually extremely bad when you're going second. Syncopate especially, because part of the power of Syncopate is being able to mess with your opponent's curve, but it's easier to mess with it when you have the option to pay 1 or 2 mana for X. When you're going second, you pretty much are paying 1 mana when they could play just a second 2-drop. If they're playing a 3-drop, then they already have landed a 2-drop, which could be a Thalia. So in other words, Syncopate cannot counter a Thalia on the draw, but it can on the play, and the difference between that is huge. Siding out Make Disappears could even be a thing because May is clearly playing around them, and you could psych May out and go, "Oh, maybe I have Make Disappears," but in reality, you don't actually have any. That being said, Ludicrous's hand here is pretty phenomenal. I think this double lay down arms with 4 planes. Did somebody say there's blue in this deck? I don't think there is.
Well, yeah, you could tell me that there was no blue in Looter Scooter's deck, and I would believe you if you saw the couple moles that have taken place between both players. Again, you're seeing white mana and blue spells, and you're like, this isn't going to work. But again, the double laydown arms is very much irresistible here. Wedding announcement here for me, a great way to get some early board presence here, and that's something that's going to make control feel just a little bit nervous here. Well, wait a second, what is that in Looter Scooter's hand? Is that a Boonbringer Valkyrie? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Kuro? That's very interesting.
It is, in fact, a Boonbringer Valkyrie, which is a very, very cool limited card from the most recent set. And I honestly have to remind myself of this. Oh my gosh, yes. So this is the backup guy that gives flying for strike and lifelink. Basically Baneslayer Angel, but also could make a token of Baneslayer Angel for a turn. That's
Mhm.
pretty incredible. If Ludicrous can land that and have it not die, that's a ridiculous amount of tempo that can be gained there. However, May has demonstrated to have removal, and this is open decklist, so Ludicrous receives 4 open mana, probably presumes an Urtai potentially. This is definitely a very tricky situation, especially now that May is able to flip this wedding announcement.
Yes, and the wedding announcement, as mentioned, was flipped here. So now there's going to be a choice between the Boombringer and the Wandering Emperor here. If you there's a pass turn here and you're in May's seat, would you assume? Would you assume that there is quite indeed a Wandering Emperor here?
Yes, always. Yeah. So Wandering Emperor is such an so you have to understand that when you're playing against Wandering Emperor, you have to always presume that it's in the hand until proven otherwise. When I'm doing the control mirror and my opponent passes with 4 mana, I'm like, okay, you got Deluge, you got Wandering Emperor. If they don't have it, I'm always extremely surprised because I always expect them to have it just in case. You have to play around it. You always have to play around because if you play your big dude and it attacks in and they Wandering Emperor you are so out of tempo. It's ludicrous. Um,
Yeah, and I mean the card that comes to mind while we're in the tank here briefly, Settle the Wreckage. If y'all remember Ixalan, another card that kind of reminds us of that scenario.
Absolutely. Settle the Wreckage was so oppressive because if they had 4 mana open, you would attack with half your board. And the whole psyching out. I have seen people hold back Shieldred because I have 4 mana open. And I'm like, why did they do that? I don't have anything in my hand. Oh, right.
Oh, Urtai hits the battlefield, says,
Ooh,
no, 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 no. I'm done dealing with this token here. So now we move on back to May's turn here after the Urtai play here. And May just says, faces the place here, but there is an Aganjo here, which will likely take out the Urtai here and leave Looter Scooter with enough time to untap here. Let's see where the token from Adeline goes.
Yeah, I would so if in Ludicrous's position, sometimes when you rush a decision like that, you forget that they choose when to attack when it comes into play. Letting it come into play and then figuring out where it attacks and then hitting it with a Gonjo is the better play. But it's fine, it doesn't matter because Ludicrous didn't draw the board wipe, so it wouldn't have made a difference either way. It's still worth mentioning though.
Absolutely. A looter scooter, that is an island off the top. So you have a Boonbringer, a Make Disappear, and now we get to see just exactly what Boonbringer is going to do to this board state. So again, as mentioned before, this is a lot like Baneslayer Angel, if you are familiar with that. If you are not, well, this angel can pretty much do it all. Flying, first strike, lifelink. This is an interesting card in this scenario, but is it too late given how wide May's board is here, Kuro?
Uh I'm trying to think about what Ludicrous can do here. Wandering Emperor can exile a token, gain 2 life, but then May still has 4 tokens attacking him because of Adeline. Runebringer blocks the Adeline. Wandering takes to 3. Adeline does not trade because that's a 5/5. Goes to 8. However, that's exactly 4 tokens, which means that's 0. So Ludicrous cannot do anything to prevent a kill here, I don't think. Because if a token is made by a Wandering Emperor and blocks the Adeline, and then a token is eaten by the Valkyrie, that's still 6 damage coming in. Yeah, and then the shield right off the top. Well, it would. I mean, there's counterspell, but yeah, Ludicrous is 1 life point away from surviving this turn. Dang.
Indeed, because Adeline will produce another token, and again, with the flipped wedding announcement, it does become a 2/2, and it is so close at this point. Just Looter Scooter doing everything possible, everything that Control can do that's possible here. And again, this could just be, very honestly, a first versus second game here, because again, we were talking about Control being on the draw versus on the play, and that is something to certainly be aware of here, as a Skrelv is being played here by May. May going to be going to face here, and I believe this will lead us into game number 3, but noble effort here by Looter Scooter, considering just how quickly May, and by extension Esper Legends here, has hit the battlefield.
It's extremely worth mentioning that May's sequencing of playing the wedding announcement first instead of playing Adeline first was extremely crucial to this game because at that time, Ludicrous did have those two laid on arms in the hand. If the Adeline had come down first, Ludicrous would immediately kill the Adeline, and that's an extreme tempo loss. But because May was able to play that wedding announcement and get basically 6 power on the battlefield, that was able to win May the game. So that very subtle decision in the very beginning of the game was able to cause a ripple effect and snowball in that particular way.
Well, get excited, folks. We are heading into game number 3, May opting to not make any changes. And now we head into Looter Scooter's decision making here. Looter Scooter taking a look at the counter spells, taking a look at the farewells. When you're going into game 3, you're thinking about, okay, what are cards I wish I had when I had lost either game 1 or game 2? And Looter Scooter very much thinking about those board wipes here. Is this pretty typical going into a game 3 for Control?
Yeah, because you want to modulate based on how the game goes. If your opponent's playing wedding announcements, you kind of have to play the farewells. It gets rid of the buff, it gets rid of the tokens pretty nicely. I'm kind of surprised that the washaways are not being removed because I don't really see them as being very good in this matchup. I'm kind of surprised to see the syncopates stay as well, but I do like them on the play. The washaway, though, washaway is such an awkward card to work with because it's 1 mana so like uh, what's the opposite of often? So rarely. It's so rarely 1 mana, and if you want a 3 mana counter, Dissipate is much nicer because it also exiles, which is really nice for Dunnick.
Well, this is a tale of two hands here. Look at that. It's wonderful, but can you take a chance on it? No, we
Oh,
go
no.
from 1 lands to 0 lands to 2 lands now. May having 5 cards, but at least May is on the draw here, so it won't be that big of a card disadvantage here. And that is a Thalia off the top for May. Oh my goodness. Talk about a card that you would love to see off the top in this scenario.
Yeah, and Scooter doesn't have an untouched land turn 2, which is so crucial to get that farmhand down. However, the Chrome Host Sea Shark can come down turn 3, which is pretty cool. That might be okay.
Absolutely here. So Looter Scooter here looking through the possibilities, but the shark is pretty irresistible. Very, very irresistible here. Now, May drawing, that is a coast off the top here. So looking like Dennick's the play here with an Odwar here is a possible play as well. Because again, that works off of legends here. May taking very careful efforts to make sure that the Odwar is open here and going down the middle past the Siege Shark, doing one poison. So this is pretty awesome move here by May.
I do like it a lot. It is very important to notice just when you're playing control and you play Odawara and Iganja so often, you forget that there's that additional bit about, hey, by the way, if your stuff, if you have a bunch of legendary creatures out, this only costs 1 mana to cast. FYI, it's really nice. The interesting thing here, though, is that May's sequencing has provided a situation where the wedding announcement cannot be cast right now, which is actually really unfortunate. It could matter in the long run.
All right, here. So it's looking like that wedding announcement. No, going for the Odawara here for the shark. Very interesting. Into another Odawara draw. What a turn of events here for me. This is very difficult now. Going for the Odawara, going for the wedding announcement. May goes for the wedding announcement here, making those aggressive plays because, again, you are warding off the board wipes here by one because of Thalia. Again, Thalia can be very good or not so good here in terms of sequencing here, but it's going to be very interesting to see how Looter Scooter reacts. And that is a shielder off the top. This game is getting ridiculous right now,
But
Kuro.
oh my god, but this Valkyrie might come down and start bashing face in response. And
Ooh.
the interesting thing is this Skrelv is actually costing a lot of life. May is not going to win on poison, I don't think. But now Looter Scooter has 7 power in the air, and May cannot deal with it. That's actually kind of a problem. And this game is a oh man. All right.
It's very back and forth. There was a lot going on here. So again, Boonbringer Valkyrie using that backup ability. And with the backup ability, not only comes the 1/1 counter, but also comes the ability to, for one turn, to carry that same lifelink trait. That is the specific trait here that we're paying attention to because again, control wants to survive. And Looter Scooter is working the way slowly up to that farewell. 7 mana, that is still quite possible here for control.
Yeah, at this point, Lou Scooter is in a position where that farewell is definitely able to be cast. The 2 lands are in play. It's not possible for Lou Scooter to lose the game next turn. The only thing May can really do is top deck a counterspell. That's yeah, Scooter just
Yep.
has the flying advantage. This is insane. I wasn't expecting to see a Valkyrie win, but Baneslayer Angel is a good card.
Yeah, turns out Baneslayer Angel that can give its powers for one turn to something else and keep the 1/1 counter quite good here. So again, we have the Sea Shark, we have the headquarters here. Let's see what happens here because again, there's a ton of really great plays here. So let's see what Looter Scooter's thinking here. Looking like the shark, looking like the shark. Again, nothing wrong here with being in the tank. Nothing wrong at all. This is a pretty critical stage in the game here. And sometimes it's good to just take a step back and just kind of assess the field on the whole. If you're a looter scooter right now, what are you thinking? Just get to the next turn, or what's your thought process here, Kuro?
So basically, the reason why headquarters is in the hand is Lusker has pretty consciously not played it the entire game, to even though it's a plains, to specifically get that cycling because the farmhand's in there and that's basically a plains. Getting the seed shark down or not basically changes whether or not you want a headquarters. And Lusker is thinking hard about whether or not she's going to farewell. Um, and she seems to be thinking that she is not in a position where she has to farewell. Because if she did, then she would have kept up the farewell. Um, May is in an awkward situation where she has to try to draw a card with the wedding announcement because otherwise she just dies. But unfortunately, in order to do that, she has to sacrifice a creature to, or well, no, she doesn't have to sacrifice because the shielded, but she does have to basically get in, and this is probably not gonna do it. It depends on what's drawn. Yeah, that's not enough.
And wedding announcement flips over here. Shieldred activates here, but it looks like
Unblock.
time is up here, so to speak, from a attacking in the air perspective to wiping the board here. As Looter Scooter's down the middle here with the entire air force of control here. This is quite a beefy swing. When you think Azorius control, you don't think of just all this stuff coming down the middle here, but there it is.
Yeah, and this sunfall here drawn here is absolutely devastating because it not only makes a 9/9 from these creatures, but it also makes 2/5/5s because of the seed sharks. So Lusker has some great options right now. Basically, she just has to rely on the idea that May has not drawn a counterspell. So Oh, the farewells. Yeah, okay. That makes sense too. Get rid of the wedding announcement.
Yes, Looter Scooter here opting to use the farewell here as, you probably want to say farewell to the flipped wedding announcement, let's face it.
Yep. What a clean board state. What a nice situation. This is great.
So, wedding announcement goes down, Thalia goes down. That should be able to ward off one more attack here. And there is just so much here that Looter Scooter can do. Animating tokens. There is a second wipe here. And that's it. That's going to be it for the match here. Looter Scooter wins it 2-1. And what a matchup here for Control versus Esper Legends. I know Kuro's here smiling. Kuro loves Azorius. Team Azorius over here. But I just want to say GG's to both players. My goodness, what an explosive match. And it just took us on this roller coaster every step of the way. Thank you to y'all for that match. That was great.
Absolutely. That was a great match. It really shows that Control doesn't have to win just because you play a lot of good card draw spells. You have the Planeswalkers that push advantages, you have the board wipes at the right time. Sometimes you just need a big, beefy flyer, and it'll get you there. That's why they're historically good. There you go.
Oh, historically, I see what you did there. With that being said, here we still have three more explosive Magic matchups here tonight on VML Season 10, Week 4. Let's take a look at the next decks here as we have Fel versus Blazin here. So taking a look at Fel, 3-0 so far. So first of all, congrats, Fel. That is awesome. And we're bringing 5-color ramp here. 5-color ramp. We're going to be seeing things like the famous Ley Line Binding here. That is such a big removal spell in this deck. And again, you think 5 colors, that's got to be hard to do. Even with Fable removed, can you believe, Kuro, that 5-color is a thing with Fable banned?
Yes, I can believe it, actually. Sorry, that may have come out a little bit more curt than I meant. The reason why this deck works so well is because it may look like 5 colors. However, 5 color decks are actually 2 color decks in disguise that are splashing like 3 different colors, right? And so this deck specifically is basically a green-white ramp deck. You'll notice that most of the cards in the main deck and the sideboard are green or white. And the way that this works is you play a bunch of lands that are tapping for green. Jetmir's Garden, Spara's Headquarters, Zayator's Proving Ground all tap for green mana. So casting the Topiary Stomper is actually much easier than you think it is, and then you also have the 4 battles that all get basic lands. If that's not enough, you also have 4 herd migrations that can just get you the basic land that you need. So in reality, as long as you have green mana, you can get any other color for basically any reason. It's actually quite easy to get there. And then since your secondary color is white, as long as you have a white mana or 2 white mana, you're good for the whole game. Then you splash for Atraxa, and there you go. It's actually pretty good. It feels like a control deck sometimes because you get a lot of lands and you get a board state, but it can feel like a mid-range deck because you just get such good value that it really gets you there. Also,
Yeah.
61 cards in the main deck. I just wanted to point that out. 61 cards.
Oh, 61 card special here. And again, to answer that question a little bit, we did ask Fel that. It says, she says, I kept the same deck, but replaced my bank busters with briefcase. And she's absolutely right here because that briefcase does provide mana. It's not quite Fable, but it is also cheaper on the same turn. So again, really looking forward to seeing her deck in action here. Let's go over to Fel's opponent. So we have Blazin here. So Blazin here has gone with Esper Legends again, kind of has turned into, I don't want to call it a villain per se. Like, we always have a habit of calling like the most played deck that, right? But Esper Legends is there. It's there, it's present, it's at the forefront, and Blazin has chosen to do this. So, again, we have Rafine, we have Denick, we have Plaza Heroes et al. So, what are we thinking about this here? I'm seeing a few different sideboard changes here. We see Lockdown, for instance. So, what are you thinking overall of this Esper Legends build, Kuro?
It's a much more streamlined list for sure. Like you said, the sideboard is a lot more. It's a lot different. It's a lot more 4-0s, so a lot less like 1-0s. I'm focusing a little bit on the main deck too because we've noticed that this is sort of a different flavor of Esper than the last game. In the last game, it was all creatures, 4 Thalias. In this match, it looks like 4 Make Disappears and 1 Thalia. So Blaze Zen is clearly interested in getting that reactive play much more so than that last Esper Legends deck. We'll have to see if that pays off. And Toulouse. Toulouse is here. Yay! I love Toulouse.
I'm excited for that as well. All right, here we go. We're rolling back into the match here. We are back on the battlefield. So, again, this is from the perspective of Fel, but again, we will see the hands of both players here. And we have, ooh, this is some pretty good stuff here. From the perspective of Fel, we have an early briefcase, ossification, herd migration, kind of late game Itali, but again, keep an eye out for that. That card's very scary. From the perspective of Blazon, some make disappear action here. Gix, which is always a fun one to draw cards, and of course the infamous Shieldred. What are we thinking about both of these hands, Kuro?
They're both pretty good for sure. I think Blazen's hand is good for addressing Fel's early ramp if Fel were to play it. However, this specific hand, it might not be as good. Make Disappear can be really rough against ramp because they are getting a lot of lands. So it's not that hard to play around Make Disappear. It's usually best when it's countering really early ramp spells. Like this briefcase. This unassuming briefcase that has absolutely no value or anything of importance inside.
the the briefcase out of Streets of New Capenna here. So again, we were just talking about that.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Blazon, they're thinking a couple turns forward here. That is a Rona that they just drew, though.
Yeah.
So again, Rona most likely coming down here, unless they're thinking about Make Disappear. And again, I love it when players go into the tank simply because we can kind of ponder, no pun intended, control players, uh, for all of the different moves here. So again, that is a Leyline Binding off the top that can also be played at 3 mana right now, given all the colors here. And Fel going for the aspication, saying, "Nah, I don't want to deal with Rona so soon."
Yeah, so Fell in this situation, I think, is actually not that upset about Blaze Zen holding up Make Disappear, because if they're holding up Counter Magic, they're not playing threats. Fell's hand is actually quite good against Make Disappear here because of, like I said earlier, there are no ramp spells that Fell actually wants to resolve. So Blaze Zen holding up a Make Disappear there, which is why they went into the tank, is trying to anticipate these four of the dinosaur, the Topiary Stomper.
Certainly, Blazen with the Rafine coming down, the Leyline Binding here on behalf of Fel here, gonna pay that one tax. Again, Rafine, not a card you want to mess with, and that is the trend with these Esper Legend decks. Every card is a threat here, as we see again. We see a Gix, we see a Shieldred, we even see Denic. Every single card here is a threat. So if you're Fel, taking a look at threat, are you just hoping to draw a bunch of Leyline Bindings here? What are you thinking here is going to be the keys to success here for both players as we are kind of taking a look here at Blazen's fourth move here?
Well, it really feels like on some level, Fella is probably trying to anticipate the fact that Blaze Zen is going to be playing four Make Disappears. So by forcing them to play a threat every turn, they are also not holding it up, which is going to be really crucial if Fella wants to try to land Itali. Because if Itali resolves, it's going to be completely insane. But if Itali is countered, then Fel basically loses. Oops.
So Gex coming down for Blazen. They are likely going to go down the middle and most certainly for Shieldred. And that's where that blocker is quite key there for Fel. Fel, meanwhile, taking a look at the herd migration, wanting to take in, and that is a Archangel of Wrath, though, off the top. And you were just talking about this earlier in terms of value, Kuro.
Yeah, the Archangel is really rough here because now Blazen actually is able to make use of this Make Disappears. Fel's normally 7 mana things that would normally Fel's 7 mana things that would normally look pretty good in this situation are actually quite awkward now because if Blazen has a counterspell, then they get to swing in for 7 for free, draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. But those cards gain 2 life, so it's really gain 2 life. And then Fel untaps and goes, okay, I guess I'll try to play Tali. Blaze then counters it, attacks for 7 again, and that's actually game because then Fel takes 2 from the Shieldred. I think, unfortunately, this is in Blaze Zen's favor unless they decide to, for some reason, not counter this Itali. That's rough.
And indeed, they do decide to counter the Atali. I mean, it's kind of difficult to resist. Atali's just so much card value there. Make Disappear for the counter here. And now Blazon untaps the Shieldred and Gix here at the upkeep and is going to do a massive amount of damage, plus a draw, which, by the way, even though you're paying for Gix to draw because of Shieldred, you're actually gaining life off of this exchange, which is ridiculous. And that, if as if that wasn't enough, that is an Urtai in addition to the make disappear here off the top. And Fel is now down to 7. Gonna try to looking like the alternate ability to herd migration here, or maybe the topiary stomp, or we'll see.
Yeah, Fel doesn't have a lot of options here. Uh, without having her board whites, without having the extra mana to cast them, this is a really rough situation. The Stomper is going to resolve, which is actually pretty good, but Blaze then has one more mana and can just play Gix. And when Gix is able to, oh well, then there's an Urtai as well. Okay, never mind. Just kidding. That's
And that
it.
is going to be game number 1 here as Blazen doing the Esper Legends thing, drawing some cards off the Gix. Gix quite powerful still in the standard. Certainly a card to watch out for in Legends. So if you are Fel going into game number 2, what do you want to prioritize here?
Well, Wandering Emperor is extremely fantastic against things like Shieldred for obvious reasons, but I'll state the reasons anyway because it makes Blazen not want to attack, which is going to be better for pressure purposes. You obviously want to side in potentially those board wipes if you can. The extra farewell, I believe it is. Oh no, sorry, the vanquish the hordes. Those are a very interesting choice, but I actually do like them because if there's 4 creatures out at least, then it's just Day of Judgment, which is pretty nice or better, which is always good. Those 7 mana spells are definitely you want to side those out because they're going to get countered so easily. So you want to make sure to lower your curve quite a bit. Yeah, I like this sideboard. Oh, Croaking Counterpart. I didn't even realize that was in the deck. That's a cool card.
Absolutely. Yeah, that one was in the sideboard here coming in. So again, we are still seeing those wipes. We're still seeing the Leyline bindings. The shell of the deck here is going, however, ooh, that is a removal of ossification. What is going to be replaced with that? Looking like the lockdown. Okay. Okay.
Oh, right, because because Fel's deck is actually 61 cards. Fel has to put a card in to make that work. Oops. That's okay though.
From Blazen's perspective here. So Thalia going to be getting cut here, taking a look at a couple different things here. Go for the throat also being reduced here.
Those disdainful strokes are probably going to get added in. Yeah, all 4 of
Yeah.
them. You need them. It is straight up counterspell against basically all of Fel's actual threats. It's such a fantastic counterspell in this meta right now. If you're up against specifically a big ol' ramp deck like that. Against mono red or against soldiers, it's pretty hot garbage in that matchup. But in this specific matchup, or even the mirror, make disdainful stroke, very, very cool card. Very balanced counterspell too, actually. I quite like it.
All right, heading into game number 2 here, taking a look at both the openers here. We have a Snap keep here from Fell and a keep from Blazen as well. So no mulligans here. And the very neat thing about the 5-color, we'll say in air quotes because you had me thinking about that earlier, Kuro, is that you can opt to take a hand like this because you have cards like Murex, because you have the abilities from Herd Migration here. So the mana is deceptively really good at being fixed here as that Plains comes out of Fell's deck here. So what do you think of this opener so far here?
Actually, both of these hands are quite weak in my opinion. They both have a lot of lands. They don't have a lot going on in terms of board presence, but I think that actually is what makes it in Fel's favor because Fel's deck wants to play things later in the game. Blaze Zen wants to play things earlier in the game. So when Blaze Zen is not getting a Shieldred down on turn 4, not getting Adeline down turn 3, that's actually good for Fel because Fel doesn't have to try to find removal for anything Blaze Zen does. And Fel is able to draw these tri-lands really, really well. Fel, in fact, has full domain right now. And Blazen is sticking with essentially a blind Takenuma, which could or could not result in a find.
So interesting situation here as Wandering Emperor hits the field here for Fel, going
Yes.
for probably the -1 here, creating a little bit of board presence here with the Samurais. Takanuma, meanwhile, happening for Blazen here, and that is a Rafine in Blazen's hand, a Rafine here. So again, both players now, what looked like a little bit of a slower start in terms of board presence here is really pardon my pun, ramping up here in game number 2.
You get 4
Sorry.
claps. You get 8 claps for that, and that's it. That's all you get.
So right here, this is quite the situation here. Invasion Ascended card, speaking of ramping here, and that is a negate from
Yes.
Blazen's side of the field here. So again, now we have the Emperor here, but there is Rafine that can take a swing at here. What do you do here in Blazen's turn? What do you think the key part of this next turn is going to be, and how will that contribute to the game going forward?
I would be thinking a lot about how I want to play this Gix out because on the one hand, you need to address this Wandering Emperor. You can't let it live forever, and if you don't attack it and you attack with Rafine, then they can just minus and kill Rafine. However, if you hit Wandering Emperor with Rafine, you do not get to draw a card with the Gix, which is an extremely interesting trade that you have to make. Urtai can't be cast because Blazon only has 3 lands. This card's going to get drawn and discarded. Not discarding Lauren is an interesting play. I don't know if there's anything in Fell's deck that really matters for that. But anyway, Wandering River is down to 1, so obviously has to plus now. However, Fell got a negate out of the hand, which implies that they're either holding Make Disappear or or another thing. So Blazon might be trying to bluff a counterspell when they don't actually have one.
+1 here onto the Samurai down the middle here for Fell. Blazen going to respond here with an Alganjo. Okay,
Yep, very,
absolutely.
very good.
So next here, going into main phase 2, a lot of possibilities here. It's looking like Bell's thinking, all right, let's just clear this board. I don't want to see Gix. I don't want to see Rafine. This is a good way to get rid of it, but not exiling here. Just gonna vanquish, gonna destroy them. Meanwhile, Blazen's like, yeah, I got this go for the throat. It's not gonna do too much here right now, but that's okay.
Hmm.
Urtai being a great draw here. So again, some counter magic here, some Dunic, leaving up a combination of Esper colors here. What could possibly go wrong here, Kuro?
um, let's see here. So Fell is in a really interesting situation. Every single spell gets countered by Disdain, but only Blazon only has 1 Disdainful Stroke. So Fell is thinking about farewelling the Denic. That is an
Hmm.
interesting play. I probably would not be tempted to do that, but I guess Fell really wants that Denic to be gone. But if Blazon, oh no! But if Blazon counters with the Disdain, then that's 1 less Disdainful Stroke they have. That's actually really bad for Blazon. Oh no, that was
So
great.
Blazon here countering the farewell, keeping the board state here, drawing into Plaza here. So Loren Urtai go for the throat still present here as the Wandering Emperor here goes down. And going into Felstern, there is that croaking counterpart here that was drawn here. But Fel's thinking, all right, let's just make a ton of elephants instead. There's all these animals, frogs, elephants, and stuff. Urtai go, no, 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 no. We do not want a stampede here of elephants. So Urtai here doing Urtai things. Blizzon going to not negate, sorry, going to Urtai that. Fel drawing a card here for the land. Not too bad here. Urtai with the block.
Trade? Oh my gosh, a trade? Really? Oh, right, because the
Ooh,
go for the throat needs to hit, it needs to hit that Atraxa and then, yeah, that Denic trigger. That's pretty good.
that is an investigation. And suddenly, Blazon's defense of the Dunic paying off here big time as that investigation helps go through Blazon's deck that much more. They are thinking a couple turns ahead here, and that counterspell did end up paying off here, but here comes the Atraxa play. Fell's thinking, okay, will it get countered? Will it not get countered? Fell's going for it here. And even if that Atraxa does get destroyed by the likely go for the throat here, there's a lot of card advantage to be gained here. Let's see what's coming off the top here, off of the Atraxa here. Looking like a little bit of everything here. Look at this massive card advantage caused by Atraxa, despite not leaving a board presence behind, Kuro.
I do like this temporary lockdown. It's very interesting because this is a good target for Lauren now. Um, so that could be problematic for Fell. However, this Lauren coming down is obviously good because now Fell has Vanquish and Sunfall both at the same time. That's really funny. That's actually extremely funny. And
All
it's
right, and that is a Takanuma off the top here for Blazon. And again, those Lorentz here didn't seem like they'd have much utility here, really coming through here with the temporary lockdown. So if you've ever wanted to undo a board wipe, and also second Denic here to the yard, as Denic is legendary here, Blazon, they have set themselves up quite well here, but that is an Atraxa off the top for
Oh,
Fel. And if I Blazon, I'd be going, really? Again? Again? But there it is. And there's the Sunfall here. And again, Kuro was talking about it earlier. Sunfall is such a big advantage here. It is so devastating. So again, Fel drawing some pretty key cards here off as Blazon here opting to Takanuma here. Let's see what's coming off the Takanuma.
I like the Gix. Gix is an
Mhm.
interesting choice because you can potentially discard your hand to steal some spells. And we know that Fell's card quality is extremely high, so Gix stealing a spell in this specific matchup would be much nicer than, say, Gix stealing spells in mono red. This 2/2 is going to be a problem. The Stomper is now a problem. Oh, right, Blazon did get her type back. That makes sense as well. But now Fell knows about it, so Fell can just play around it with absolutely no problems.
So again, another thing that Lorraine can do is take care of the artifacts. The artifacts that can happen here, the incubator tokens here. So going to take care of that threat. And let's see here. There was an Urtai and a Danik here. Can only do one or the other this turn. Blazon opting to leave the Urtai in hand. But again, Fel can see this here as indicated. So it'll be interesting to see how both players play around that counter magic because Fel's not going to want to play directly into a counterspell that is Urtai with the Atraxa, that is.
Yeah, Fell is almost tempted to potentially make Murex tokens, which would be extremely funny and extremely cursed. Because that's not really what you do in this matchup because Blazon has so many things. Oh my gosh, a Lauren draw? That is
Hmm.
not what I was expecting at all. That is wild.
And speaking of wild, that is a Raven Man that has just hit the field for them. Raven Man here and a Make Disappear. And the threats just seem to keep piling up here. But speaking of threats, that is a Mirex. We are going to start playing the poison game here in terms of poison counters here. So this is, again, turning out to be a very exciting match here. Both players just going at it, not giving up. And let's see what Maseju hits here. And it's going to be Plaza. Why? Because, well, Plaza is a card that can protect a lot of the legends here. So yeah, gonna get rid of that. Again, multiple plazas are quite dangerous. So let's see what's grabbed. And it is going to be a plains here. And that is a leyline binding off the top here for Fel. How significant of a role do you feel like that leyline binding is going to play here in game number 2, Kuro?
Well, it's definitely a nice removal spell, and it's something that needs to be answered. Blazon has played 2 Laurens already, and I just realized something else. That token being placed is basically paying for mana to not pay 1 extra mana this turn, which is so fantastic because it allows you to have exactly 9 look spells counting exactly 9 mana, so that Make Disappear cannot counter Atraxa. And fellas,
Wow.
double check the math. There you go. What a play. If that
Yeah.
insect was not there, that Vanquish would not have cost enough. As crazy insane. I love that.
Yes, Fel playing around a make disappear possible make disappear play because that is not known. Certainly knows about the Urtai play, so definitely wanted to wait till the Urtai mana was gone. But Atrax again just grabbing that card advantage in this relentless ramp 5-color deck in disguise here, and it's just so relentless here. Blazon doing a
Oh,
make disappear at least on the briefcase there, and it's just this is a tough position to be in if you're Blazon.
so if I was Blazon in this situation, I would unironically be thinking about how can I mill Fell? How can I mill Fell's deck?
Hmm.
Because interesting thing about 5-color ramp that I found is that you can actually mill them pretty easily if you play it right, because they draw so many cards as that archetype that they generally get down to like 20 cards by the end of a game. If you can like force a draw with Urtai, if you continuously bounce Atraxa and make them keep trying to get value out of it, they're not actually playing counter spells. And the rule they play is enchantments. You can theoretically mill them out. That being said, this herd migration is going to be such big pressure, it probably doesn't matter. But it's something worth noting. If Blazon had like a Jace or two, that could be like, oops, actually,
Ooh,
you just die.
that's a lot of tokens. Oh my goodness, that is big. Going with the Otawara here for the massive token. Great play here by Blazon.
Yeah, that leyline binding not looking that useful.
All right,
It's
Loran off the top here. Danik going to be played here for some life gain. And this is looking like a rough position here for Blazon. Again, the sharks are going to be adding up. There's going to be tons of beasts and animals all over the field in the form of tokens here. This is tough. We're starting to see why Leyline Binding is such a strong card. However, there is the Loran here, which could break the Leyline Binding, which invariably makes Loran a very valuable creature in this matchup here, especially if we're thinking here about a possible game 3 scenario.
That would be definitely a potential thing. Unfortunately, this Denic is just gonna die. Blazen is not gonna bother using that Plaza of Heroes because there's just too much power here. That 1 mana Leyline turned into a 6/6 incubation token. This is just that was just icing on the cake. -11.
Wow. So we're going into game 3 again. Another intense and fantastically played game by both players here. Going to game 3 here. And are there going to be any adjustments made before going into game 3?
Hmm. I would be thinking a lot about being on the draw for sure. Having those Denics, having all of those white creatures, I would be tempted to potentially play the Barrage. But since red isn't one of the main colors in this deck, it's really, really hard to justify that decision. I really like Topiary Stomper in this matchup. I don't think Croaking Counterpart is that useful. I would probably side it out. I do like Herd Migration. I would put that in. Um, Other than that, not a lot of changes I think are necessary. The lockdowns are actually quite nice because they get rid of the Denics really nicely. The
The,
Sunfall is really good. The Vanquish is good. Sorry.
the barrage is interesting here. That is a very interesting one. Going into game number 3, on the draw here. So makes sense. Going into Blazen's side here, what do you think they're going to want to make sure that they go to accomplish here in game 3? So they are looking to be on the play here. They're going to be on the play. And I think they're just going to want to clear out as soon as possible, not let the game drag on, because as the game drags on, that is in four color domain's favor. What are you thinking here, looking at the rest of the sideboard here, that Blazen should be thinking about, and also evaluating the board here going into game number 3?
I would really side in Thalia here. Being on the play and playing Thalia is so backbreaking to a ramp or a control deck. It's unreal. Like I don't quite see a reason to not put it in. And then mulliganing aggressively, like I said last game, mulliganing aggressively to find those answers to the big spells. Having 9 2-mana counter spells, it's not going to be hard to mulligan into at least one of them. Make Disappear is obviously way better, but Disdainful Stroke can still counter the ramp siege, which is fine. I don't think the Raven Man is very helpful here in this matchup. I also don't think the Go for the Throw is very helpful either. I think you need to pressure, pressure, pressure. If they play board wipe, it sucks, but it is what it is. They're gonna have the board wipe no matter what. There's no reason to like consider it. Raven Man is okay, but it's too expensive to try to get that discard because they're just gonna play the lands and just kill it anyway. It's interesting. That was not There's no Thalia brought in. We'll see how that goes.
We're heading into game 3 here. Blazen, they have only seen one land here in the opening hand. Meanwhile, Fell, pretty reasonable opening, but again, not the fastest opening, but we aren't used to seeing that domain being fast. However, the second hand that Fell has, pretty well balanced here in terms of creatures, stuff to do. I mean, this is pretty decent hand here for both players now here early in game number 3. Just I think this is going to be an explosive match. What do you think based on these two hands, Kuro?
It's worth mentioning that the first hand that Fell had no white mana in it, which is actually a pretty major issue because two of
Mhm.
those cards were extremely good white cards. So even though the barrage was there, that's not enough to justify keeping the hand. I just felt it was important to mention that. Both of these hands are pretty good. Blaze Ends is way better because Fell's temporary lockdown only hits this Denic, which is super meh, but it is offset by those double Chrome Host Sea Sharks, which can be really good. Oh, look, Farewell, my favorite magic card.
So Blazon here. Let's see what's going to be played here. A lot of good choices here. And going for the gigs here to get the draw off the Denic here. And again, kind of discounted here considering Denic's life gain here. So again, Blazon here, they are coming in strong here in game number 3. But speaking of strong, that is a Seed Shark and yet another Seed Shark here. But that's it for now. Bella is out of lands until she can find another one here. Not a position you want to find yourself in if you're a domain deck. Meanwhile, speaking of tough positions here, that is Rafine, and we are going to be doing some conniving here.
Yeah, Fell having farewell and lily binding instead of like what's the other one? The Vanquish the Horde right now? Having Vanquish would actually be extremely useful because if Blazen tries to commit to take advantage of Fell's like not having lands, that would be just a devastating thing to have. But now Blazen doesn't even block. Wow. Okay. I mean, sorry, Fell doesn't even block. I can't
So
read.
yes, Blazon here getting a couple draws here, and they are pretty much in it there in terms of card advantage. Lockdown hitting the board, going to only hit the Denic here, as all Fel can do is just wait for more lands here. Meanwhile, Blazon here finding options, couple disdainful strokes in hand, a
Oh,
Loran in case that's needed. Just so many great options here. If you are Blazon, that again, that is Esper Legends here in game 3. And again, Blazon going down the middle here, this time targeting Gix to try to connect and get some more cards here again to further strengthen the conditions in terms of hand support here. And again, the key thing to look at right now, we have to be thinking about those lands, Fel.
I think it's worth mentioning also that temporary lockdown does not just hit Denic, it also hits the incubation token that the Siege Shark made before the lockdown resolved, which is so extremely awkward because that means you can't have that 3/3 for later when you want to try to block something. You have to get that board wipe now. And Fel has been missing so many drops, land drops. I don't see this working out. This
Fel
is rough.
going for the ley line binding here. Fel finally does. Again, Fel thinking about those lands, finds a land here, and the sea shark will take effect here. But now, disdainful stroke. Blazon did have a counter spell up here, but the shark does still hit the field and can be paid for here. But again, is it too late here for Fel to rally back with just the farewell in hand?
That's an Otawara, which bounces that token. I that was such an unfortunate game. It probably could have gone longer, but not drawing lands, that's really rough. That lockdown, those lockdowns were definitely really awkward. I probably, in hindsight, I probably would side them out. I just don't know how useful they are in this matchup specifically. Too many of those threats are 3 drops.
All right, Blazing down the middle here. Look at all that card draw off of Rafine here, off the connive. I mean, Rafine is one of those cards that spirals out of control so quickly. And again, you see the card advantage here. And that is what this game is about between these two decks. This is all about momentum here. And in this matchup in game number 3, Rafine is creating all of the momentum here for Blazon. They are just getting all the card advantage.
Absolutely. And you have the Gix drawing extra cards, you have the Raffine able to filter through them. And that's a double Otawara, so there's absolutely nothing Fel can do. This game is lost, unfortunately. That's rough.
Well fought by both players there, but again, the ramp decks need the land, and that is going to be game number 3. GG to both players as Blazon takes the victory. They will continue just to go forward with that momentum. As Esper Legends is, it's going to be interesting to see what both players bring into next week. And again, remember here at the VML, you are allowed to change your deck every week. So it's very interesting to consider how all of the players here will change their deck preferences from week to week. So again, something to think about for next week. Maybe we're going to see a ton of just counterplay here towards Esper Legends, as it seems to prove to be pretty strong. But again, there is that Azorius control to think about that we've seen. Kura, what do you think so far of the post-ban standard?
It's well, our situation is pretty biased right now because our matchups that we looked at are the mid-range matchups that are ostensibly value based. We saw in the pie chart earlier that there are aggro decks that are in play, such as mono red or soldiers. We haven't covered very much of that yet. However, the field in terms of looking at these value piles, not having Fable the Mirror Breaker to get those treasure tokens and value, not having Reckoner Bank Buster to be a colorless source of card advantage, losing out on those makes it really tricky to keep certain hands that would normally be keepable. If the four color ramp deck had Fable in that third game, it would have gone completely differently because those treasure tokens could have gotten you there. You would have had potentially to you could have looted away those temporary lockdowns because they're not helping you, and you could draw something else. Basically, we're looking at a format that has a little bit less consistency than we're used to. And I think that is perfectly fine because having that lack of consistency means that the games are just more exciting and you have to find different ways around it.
Absolutely. Well said. So now we still have two more games tonight, and we're going to go into our next matchup here. Let's see what we have. All right.
Woo!
So what do we have here? Mono red aggro. So we're talking
Woo!
about favorites here. I always prefer the aggro play style here. And this is what we have here for our third game tonight. So again, cards to look out for. We have Kamada faces Kakasan, Monastery Swift Sphere. We have the Barrage here. And oh my gosh, just literally all of the aggro here. What are we thinking of this deck?
It seems very meta dependent. The four of Lithomancer's Barrage, that's the oh my gosh. The hate on the white and blue creatures is very real in this deck. But I think it's actually a very appropriate choice because we have seen a lot of blue and white creatures and planeswalkers, I believe, that are worth killing and having 1 mana to kill a wandering emperor. It can even kill an eternal wanderer if it doesn't plus. That's actually crazy for 1 mana. And it cannot be countered for good measure. So it beats up blue white control. It beats up the Jace. It beats up the Wanderers. It also beats up soldiers. So if you play them the aggro mirror in that way, that's good. It can beat up Raffines really well because it can't be countered. You don't have to pay the ward. It's super helpful. At worst, you deal 1 damage or something. That's really underwhelming, but honestly, it's fine. You have ways to make that work. You have ways to make it valuable anyway.
I get the feeling Malte does not like blue because he says Kumano is the best card in the deck and against Azorius as well. After sideboard, Lithomantic Barrage is important for dealing with their creatures. Someone has run into mono blue just a few many times to see that. And I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's see who Malte's opponent is going to be. And we have Kansaki here on Azorius control, Tale as Old as Time, control versus aggro. This is a matchup that is just absolutely adored by the Magic community here. So Azorius versus Mono Red here. So cards to watch again. We have Wandering Emperor, we have the Sharkback, and Boon for Your Valkyrie makes another appearance tonight. Strong showing the first time here, but will the Barrage change this? What do you think of this matchup? And by extension, I know how much you love Azorius, so walk us through this deck.
Playing against mono red aggro is a situation where it depends highly on how you build your deck. If your deck is geared against mid-range value piles, you're going to suffer a lot against mono red because they're going to undercut a lot of your board wipes and card draw. However, if you have good stuff in your sideboard to beat mono red, such as Sunset Revelry, Knockout Blow, anything like that, you're hedging against aggro a little bit more and you're suffering against mid-range. So there's some cards where the choice you make really shapes the way that your matchup plays out. Certain cards are very good, such as Elspeth's Smite, that are very good against hasters, not so good against cards that don't attack immediately. Late on Ours is a fantastic removal spell, but against mono red, it's actually not that good because they're going to attack you for a thing. And so you're basically wasting a card when they're playing a shock. That's really rough. Shock to make you discard a card is really ridiculous. Elsa Smite, in contrast, is able to kill something which is basically a counterspell, which is fantastic. That's where you want to be. Speaking of counterspells, they're usually very bad against mono red.
Can I just say I really appreciate Kansaki's avatar here, the magic salty. I love their choice here. Like just absolutely loving it here. So let's go into this match. Tale as old as time here. Mono Red Aggro versus Azorius Control. Very much let us know where your loyalty is in the chat, which one you like. People tend to either like one or the other. So here we go here into game one.
If
There's
I
the
could jump
barrage.
in for a moment, please. Hi everybody, this is Phoebe. I am, of course, the disembodied voice of the producer here. I just wanted to let you guys know, there is an error, on this match. I accidentally left, Malte's, pronouns as he, they, It should be he, him. That's on me. I do apologize. On with the show.
All right, so let's see what Malte has here. He is going to unleash the adversary first here. So, what more than a make disappear? Again, just a very classic start here. So, again, Malte here, thinking about his options, we have a possible squee here, another adversary, a Shivan Devastator, so many choices here. If you're mono red here, going for our good friend Squee here, and Kansaki responds with looks like an Aganjo here. So pretty explosive start here by both players.
Yeah, this is definitely really rough for Kansaki. He's absolutely right in his evaluation. Well, he's right in my opinion. He's very correct in analyzing that game one. It's really rough. Multi can just slam those Devastators, and they just get in. And if that, like I said, if that lay down arms with a Elspeth Smite, this would be so much better for Kansaki. But now Kansaki has to waste a turn using the lay down arms or using Wandering Emperor, and he just has to choose which one rather than making multi potentially play a second threat here. Although wasting a rule spell on the Emperor instead of something else could be good. So it is still a 2-for-1. But
So Wandering Emperor does hit the field. However, Nahiri's Warcrafting here. And wow, just wow, if you're Malte here. So he has a lot to think about here. I see an invasion of Tarkir here. He's taking a look through the yard. What else do we have here? Swift Spear. A lot of great options here. And again, the Emperor melts, and now we have some board presence here for Malte, and looking like a Teferi here. This is starting to get really interesting. So it's very rare that we get to see Azorius control kind of on the back foot, right? Like resources are starting to run out rapidly. What do you think you have to do if you're Kansaki here? Or what are you thinking you have to draw if you're on the back foot here?
you have to be. It's not just what you draw, it's the order at which you draw it. The very first hand had some board wipes in it, and those would have been really nice. However, there was no early game, so if Multi had played early creatures, there was no way to deal with those. So you just die before you play the board wipes. But if you have early removal, you can just get removed from the game if your opponent just has a ton of creatures, and there's nothing you can do about that either. It's a really rough situation for game one for sure. Oh my god, another
So
squee.
if you're Malte here, this is the gift that keeps on giving here. Again, just mono red doing mono red things here against control. Can Kansaki, can he draw a wipe? No, that is a plains off the top for Kansaki here. So going in, Malte's not afraid here. Shivan Devastator as he slams that on the board, goes down the middle. And again, just like that, Kansaki down to 3 life here. And that is a scrutiny here. Not sure if that's going to be enough. Let's see what Kansaki plays X for here. I mean, if you're Kansaki, how do you even come back from a board this wide without a wipe? And again, scrutiny can only draw so many cards and still get the wipe here.
Yeah, you do X equals 5 so that you can see what your next 5 cards are, and then you scoop. That's what you do. Like the only I guess theoretically you could do X equals 1, try to get a 4 mana wipe. I don't think one exists right now, but I would probably just draw 5 cards just to see what I had, just in case. Like I want to see because Arena doesn't let you see, so I always take the opportunity to do so. Oh yeah, there's the one. Oh, it's a plains.
Oh, and that is a lightning strike off the top. So even if there
Yeah.
was a wipe, that was a done deal there for game number 1. And again, compared to all these other games, if you blinked, you missed that match, quite literally. A Squee, again, just making all of these appearances. Kuro, if you're going into the sideboard and you're mono red, what are you thinking needs to get done here in order to take game number 2 if you're in multi issues?
I actually really like Hearse because if you know that your opponent's playing board wipes that can kill creatures, the Hearse forces not only does it exile memory delusions, and other useful things, but it also potentially becomes a threat against like those Sunfalls. However, it was not brought in, which I thought was an interesting choice. I decisions are good for the control list. However, you obviously have to side out a lot of things that would normally be good against other decks. Your very expensive spells, not so good. Depopulate, very good. Everything's mono red. Sunfall's great too. Very not so great. Um, Emperor's obviously fantastic. You playing your own Hearse is great because it kills their adversaries' triggers, and I don't like Wash Away here either. I'd probably take it out personally. Yeah.
All right, here. So again, to reiterate, this is just a tall order if you're in the control matchup. This is very difficult. However, if you're going first in this matchup and you're control, there is always, always, always a chance here. Kind of going with the early from removal here. We have the lay down arms, the make disappear, soul partition. That is a card we haven't had a chance to see either. Let's see how this goes going into game number 2 here. That is a single land hand for Kansaki and a 0 land hand for Malte. Yeah, this is just a little awkward. Just a little awkward for
Well,
both players here.
well, you see, the upside to keeping this one land hand is that you can definitely lay down arms for one. That's it. That's the only upside. That was a good mulligan.
All right, this one's looking a little bit better for Kansaki. Plains Island, Soul Partition, Sea Shark taking back the thirst for discovery, opting to take both Wandering Emperors because again, that is a source of life gain here. And here comes one of Malte's favorite cards in a turn or two here. That is a Kumano faces Kakazan here. But there's also an invasion of Tarkir, so again, that can help stabilize the board a little bit early on, which is what you need if you're mono red. But going for the Kumano faces Kakazan here. All right, all right. Let's see what Kansaki draws. There is another. Oh, and that is 4 lands total. If you're Kansaki, this is wonderful news here because, again, both Emperors are able to be played here. So, what are we thinking about Kansaki's position given control versus aggro here in game 2, Kuro?
This is actually really, really good for Kansaki. The squee is okay, but it's not amazing because now the token's blocked. You can Wandering Emperor kill it, make a 4/4. You're really ahead. Malti's not playing board wipes, and so Kansaki can potentially just get enough board presence that Malti just dies to the board presence. This Chandra just to kill isn't doing anything. The Invasion of Sarkir is a shock that is not going to be flipped. Devastator is a 3/3, which is fine, but ultimately not going to do it. Malti's definitely on the back foot here.
Chandra, though. Chandra, which can pick off the Wandering Emperor and deal
Yes.
the damage of life. Not bad at all, as well as enable Invasion of Tarkir to hit the board here.
Yeah, what's rough is that Malti doesn't have another dragon, so it only deals up to 3 damage right now. So hitting the face is probably, yeah, there it goes. Pew!
Ooh, going for the invasion here instead. Interesting.
I like it. Makes sense to me. You flip it, it's a 4/4 flying that hits something for 2 and it attacks. That's crazy insane. And if you have a Devastator in your hand, if you can flip that, it's good as well.
Kansaki here going on the aggressive front
Yes.
against Mono Red. This is a very interesting turn of events here. Wow.
Did you know that blue white aggro?
You know what? You could have convinced me otherwise if we didn't see the deck cards here, because this looks entirely different than what we saw in game 1, and by extension, just by the typing in general here. So, Soul Partition again in hand for Kansaki, getting a land and another invasion of Tarkir here. And interesting play here. We have does not play the Devastator, right? Just going for invasion here, and maybe going to pick off the shark.
So
Does the damage here?
there are a number of plays that Malti could have done. Malti could have actually played the invasion, revealed the dragon, and just flipped the other invasion with the 3 damage. However, Malti is trying to kill the Seed Shark. Now, fun fact about Soul Partition. If you exile your own stuff with Soul Partition, it actually does not cost an extra tax.
Revealing the dragon here. Do you change that dragon damage? Nope, just fully going through with this.
Also, Soul Partition to like reset your Wandering Emperors is pretty awesome as well.
Thinking about the shark here though, because again, you do get a 2/2 incubator token as well. Let's see, looking like the play Kansaki's going with here, and this is a great way to use Soul Partition.
Yeah, it's not like Fateful Absence where you're like, I guess I'll just draw a card and cycle something. You're like, no, actually, I get to get it back. That's cool. And you don't have to pay tax.
And there goes the token here. So again, doesn't cost extra if it's on your side. It's basically a bounce, but a bounce that can't be discarded, which is neat. That is a depopulate off the top for Kansaki. And again, Kansaki's position looking all the more commanding, which you don't expect here from this matchup. And this is looking pretty promising here if you're Kansaki.
Yeah, you don't need to depopulate anymore at this point. Multi is now on the back foot almost entirely and really needs to get something down to block these creatures that are coming in. But this Wandering Emperor makes things so difficult to do that. Actually, yeah, no, never mind.
Yeah. X
Math.
equals 4 here. Give up the Seed Shark or have to deal with the invasion here. And Kansaki is opting to get rid of the Seed Shark off the top. It's another
Oh, right.
farmhand.
Yeah, that's lethal because it's exactly 9.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wow. We head into game 3 here, and let's see how the strategy changes up here. It looks like Malty is going to be lowering the curve here. Great strategy here going into game 3. Looks like the Raptors are going to be the top. Possibly a Jaya here, possibly a Jaya. Kind of adjusting the board here.
Not having those lightning strikes, I think, is really interesting choice. Lightning strike is actually a card I'm usually pretty afraid of because they can just top deck it and then suddenly win the game. That's pretty threatening.
All right, putting back in the Nahiri. Meanwhile, we are back to Kansaki's end and kind of pondering the options here. But when it comes to the aggro versus control, in terms of the control, that's pretty cut and dry sideboarding. You want to make
Yeah,
sure. Oh, good.
I would really side in the Spell Pierces and take out the Syncopates. Syncopate is just not good on the draw, and then Spell Pierce is fantastic. It gets rid of the battle. It gets rid of the Kumano if they play it on turn 2. Gets rid of Chandra. Gets rid of a little Jaya. Like for 1 mana, it's really fantastic. I would really, really want to put it in here.
I do want to ask, what do you think of? Well, actually, I'll ask you later. It was involving Teferi and it's in his presence here, Teferi's presence type, but we can get to that a little bit later. Been very interested in that. Going into game 3 here, 2 barrages in the opening from Malte. That is like hitting the jackpot here in terms of mono red. And this is again Kumano versus Kakasan here, pretty standard play here early in the game for Malte here. And okay, so pretty much Malte can guess what's in Kansaki's hand at this point.
Ooh, but Multi not getting that that third land is actually pretty devastating because now that Squeeze not coming down. That's going to be a problem.
So Kansaki here, we have the turn passed. Sees the shark, soul partition, farmhand. Let's see, going with the farmhand here, thin out the deck. There's already a lot of lands in hand, so taking a further one out of the deck, not a terrible idea here. Meanwhile, that is a land. And most likely going to be going with the squee, as was said, as foretold, if you will.
As foretold isn't legal in standard right now.
Exactly. That's so we have down the middle here, squee token, flipped Kakazan here. Not bad, not bad. Meanwhile, that is a lay down arms, which is again good option here for getting rid of a squee.
Classic LDA exiling squee. Very nice, very good.
All right. Game's pretty fast paced here, and I'm gonna say no. No to the Seed Shark. No. No. That's why Barrage was a key card in this matchup. Kamano, again, going down the middle, 2 more life. Invasion of Tark here will hit the field, go face. Face is the place here.
I'm wondering why the invasion wasn't played first and then just attacked for 2, and then you could play the second invasion, flip it, and get value that way. That was an interesting sequence of events.
Speaking of value here again, Kansaki wanting to get the lands out of the deck. Keep seeing the land draws. Keep seeing the land draws. Not bad, as long as you hit what you need for whatever wipes you have in here. The problem is when you draw too many in this matchup. Too many. Putting up another blocker here. That is the 1/1 Incubator down the middle for Kansaki. Interesting. Meanwhile, an invasion. We have a second Devastator here. Another invasion. So there are some decisions to be made here, and some of them might involve invasion of Tarkir, barrage, etc. What are you thinking? This is a pretty tangled situation here if you're Malte.
Reading Kansaki's decisions, even if I didn't know the hand, I would expect Kansaki to just not have very much. Attacking for 1 is a very bold play that makes me feel like If I were
Ooh.
Kansaki's opponent, I would feel like that he has absolutely nothing in his hand. Um, I see no reason to attack blatantly like that.
Malte goes down the middle with both creatures saying, invasion. Invasion is something that I may want to stay on the field if there's a wipe or something. But again, depopulate. That is depopulate for
Of course.
Malte. But that is a Monastery Swift Spear off the top.
We could play the invasion. Oh well, yeah. I guess that's three, and then prowess.
Yeah,
That's two, and then ugh,
that's,
yikes. That's
that
rough.
is that is damage. Again, those Shivan Devastators also doing work in the hand here. 3 damage, and this is going to be a swing likely down the middle here, unless, oh, here comes Soul Partition saying, no, 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 I need more time, as Control does.
These
That is
lands.
a land off the top. Massive flood here. And if you're Malte, do you just go for it here?
I would. Your mono red. The chances of them like winning the game gets higher and higher every card they draw. But then again, Kansaki isn't playing very much life games, so I guess Malty is not really thinking that hard about like what if they draw Sunset Revelry because Kansaki's not really playing that.
Okay, gonna go for the Shivan Devastator for how much? Going for the Gusto here. Gonna go into a Syncopate, as that was Kansaki's draw. This is still exciting. This is down to 1 here. Down to 1. And you only need 1 point to win. And that is a land off the top for Kansaki. This is going to be game here for Malte. Oh my gosh, what a matchup. What a matchup here. That's going to be 3 games. And again, thank you so much to both Malte and Kansaki for game there. Oh my goodness. I love watching those matchups because you just never know which way the game's going to swing momentum wise. Especially, it's rare to see the game run that many turns and it's not quite in Control's favor. That's just how Magic goes sometimes. What did you think of that matchup, Kuro?
It was definitely a it was definitely a good example of how Control can easily lose to mono red for the reasons I said earlier. If you don't hedge against it to any degree, if you're not playing Revelries, if you're not playing Knockout Blows, you're gonna have a really rough time. It's hard to work through that matchup if you are not prepared for it. And since it's so much of the field, it's good to prepare for it now. That's what I think.
Yes, and that again, just the games tonight have been so intense, just from all different angles. We have one more game here tonight for VML, so let's roll forward and see what it is. And we have Zoe here, and she is on Orzhov Midrange here. We haven't had a chance to see this deck too much in action tonight. And again, this is another deck that is in the current meta post bans here. So again, wedding announcement, that is another meta card we love to see here. But I'm going to leave the analysis here to Kuro. Kuro, what do you think?
Well, it feels a lot like the pre-ban mono white decks. We have all this value, you have all these emperors, you have all these wedding announcements, you have all of this card draw. It's mono white though, and you're not playing Reckoner Bankbuster anymore, so you have to pad that with other cards too. Uh, oh man, I don't actually recognize that black card in the main deck by the picture. Is that what? What is that?
That might be Breach. Breach, if I were to guess. I'm trying to see. It's
Oh,
either Breach or it's the board wipe spell for Invasion. Yeah, it's a little blurry here. Let me see if I can pull up the deck list really quickly while we're waiting.
that's fine.
That
Oh,
is
well,
Breach. That
it
is
is Breach.
Breach. It is
Got it.
Breach. Yes, confirmed.
Got it.
Yes.
That makes sense. Um, So that's just a great card to put in. Obviously, you're splashing black for that. It's it's so funny because it's basically almost like Italy, where you're paying 7 mana to get just a lot of value while also messing with your opponent's plan. It's a little more reliable, but it's very cool. The sideboard obviously takes advantage of playing black. You have 4 duresses. You have all this extra removal spells. If you think that white couldn't remove everything, well, then you have black to remove things too. There you go.
Wow. And I just want to say, Zoe, love the cat. Absolutely. I love seeing animal friends in pictures. So, Zoe, thank you so much. And again, just very excited for Lord of the Rings as well. Again, as Zoe says, I'm not sure how much I will play it, but the recently spoiled Goldberry art has me especially excited. Absolutely here. We're going to go to Zoe's opponent now. And we have Sarah England here. She is on mono red aggro. So again, mono red crawling out of the woodwork after the most recent bans, which again, as Kuro had stated earlier, made things more consistent. Well, when things are inconsistent, that's when mono red begins to take charge here. So again, a lot of familiar faces here, except there's a little more upscaling here, right? Like we're seeing some dragons here. Oh my gosh, just so many different faces in this deck. So that just goes to show you there's a lot of different ways to play mono red, Kuro.
Yeah, this deck attacks more and it has a lower curve. It plays some Strangles, it plays Feldoms. It doesn't play the Invasion. It doesn't play Nihira's Lithoforming, which is really interesting. It even has Mishra's Foundry, which I think is a really cool man land. Of course, the Barrage is in the sideboard. We have Koths in the sideboard. No Jayas, which is very interesting.
But there
Also,
is a Thundering Raiju, though. Like, what do you think of that card? That card's scary.
I love that card. It is just as annoying to play against as something like Feldon or Reckless Stormseeker. You get it down, but the thing is that because it's 4 mana, it can come down pretty late, and you're not always playing a lot of lands. So sometimes you just don't hit the fourth land, and you're kind of sad. You're like, oh, this sucks. It depends on the game. It depends on the situation.
So, last thing I want to emphasize here is: are you excited for the new Lord of the Rings set? And Sarah says, "Absolutely, I am. I'm going to find the One Ring too." I love it. I love the attitude. Let's go into this matchup here. Very, very, very excited for this one. So on the opener here, we have some ossification, some wedding announcements, and a sunfall. Seems like everything you would want against mono red aggro. What do you think of the opener here, especially in Zoe's situation?
Well, these storefronts play double duty. They give you a land, they give you a life, and later when you get down to Sarah Paragon, it's another land and another life. Gaining life is really cool, and it means that you don't lose for a while, and that's just a really nice thing to happen.
All right, so we have the ossification here, not messing around with the Swift Spear, as that can add up rather quickly here. Back over to Sarah's turn. And a lot of choices here. Might see a combination of Kumano and maybe the Phoenix trick here again, playing multiple spells in a turn, proving to be rather useful, creating that board presence, Kuro.
I wonder if I would have put a counter on the Monsters to Spear with the Kumano Faces Kakazan, because now it doesn't have an opportunity to actually put a counter on anything. It's kind of unfortunate, but that's the situation as it is right now.
All right, so going into the next turn here, again, both players kind of feeling out the game right now. Both feeling relatively comfortable here. Again, Kamano faces Kakazan. The Phoenix chick down the middle here, 16 for Zoe. And again, every point counts here. And that is a laydown arm. So again, a ton of removal here for Zoe early here in game number 1. If you're going up against Mono Red, this is definitely the setup you would like to have here. Is there anything else that would be more ideal at this point if you're Zoe?
Wandering Emperor, for sure.
Wandering Emperor.
Yeah, so a Wandering Emperor would be really, really nice, other than the fact that Zoe does not actually have a fourth land. It might be okay because she doesn't have it, but faking having it is actually a pretty hilarious thing to do against Mono Red, because you make Sarah think, uh-oh, maybe I shouldn't actually get this Raiju out. Oh, this swamp. The swamp could matter, because now that Late on Arms cannot hit the Raiju. Ooh, okay.
All right, so lay down arms here for the check. Goes away up to 23 for Sarah. So again, there's still an ossification there that could serve as an answer. Zoe here opting to take another token here off of wedding announcement. Lightning strike right to the face for Sarah. I love that. I love the sound effects. Kumano flipping over, one of them at least hitting the field. And here it comes, the enormous Thundering Raiju. That is terrifying. It's going to be a 4-4 continuing, and now the etching is now a 3-3 double block. Perfectly fine here for your Zoe, especially sitting on top of a Sunfall. Just gotta hit that land, and it's kind of a land, but you're going to need one more turn here. Could be a good thing. Ambitious farmhand here for the land, and you have to start wondering now about ossification as well.
I like the ossification on the Raiju because it forces Sarah to think about, what do I get down? because this token is going to enter and then this announcement flips. So blocking is actually something that Zoe can do pretty reliably. See, now Sarah has another Raiju, which is going
Mhm.
to play right into the Sunfall that's about to happen.
It is important to mention for folks who may have not seen it, Thunder Raju is not legendary. I repeat, it is not legendary. But having, I mean, I know, right? Multiple copies of this card, of this very devastating card, is possible here. So again, just something to consider going forward. This is a lot of beef going forward for Mono Red, and we'll see how Zoe responds with blockers.
So the interesting thing is the Sunfall is probably going to come down this next turn. Hitting it on the Raiju itself is a very interesting play, in my opinion. I probably would have put it on the etching that isn't very big because then it pushes more damage through. Because now instead of potentially going to, what is it, 13 to 11 and then to 8, Zoe is now block, go to 10, which that 2 damage is 1 extra attack from a Foundry or 1 extra shock. Um, that's going to be a problem for Sarah, I think, in the long run. Sunfall is very cool. Mommy
All right.
Norn is going to come down later.
I mean, that is the card against any creature-based deck there. Sunfall hitting the field, doing things it should. Then another Kumano faces Kakusan off the top. So it looks like Sarah is going to go horizontal here to try to take out Zoe's remaining 10 life. But remember, that is an Elish Norn in Zoe's hand. And that prayer has a pretty hefty toughness, a pretty hefty butt. So definitely going to play a factor here against Mono Red. Main phase 2, Kumano faces Kakusan here. And again, holding onto that Soken-san because, again, can't use it as an additional land anyways. And off the top, that is an invasion of Govicon, but Zoe more than likely going to opt to play the butt that is Elish Norn here. So again, both players in a very interesting position here, given where we are in game number 1.
I would definitely play Mommy Norn here because it's really important to get that big toughness dude. Mono Red cannot kill this. Like,
Oh,
period.
sorry, 5'8", 5'8". That is the size of Elish
Yeah.
Norn in
Yeah.
this one. Oh my gosh.
Look, when she comes down, everybody stops and stares.
Oh yeah.
It's just something that happens. However, this does allow Feldon to see the top 5 cards, which is pretty good actually.
Yeah, Feldon not swinging here. And remember, Feldon cannot block here as Zoe plays Invasion of Govicon here. Going to take a look at Sarah's hand. Notice that it's only going to be a Soken-san here. So now, there again, one of the great things of Magic. Do you hit the battle or do you hit face here? Again, something that always needs to be considered now, given this new mechanic. That's battles, and that can make or break a game. So it's going to be interesting to see where Zoe goes here.
I would hit the battle because of vigilance, and having the extra hexproof is very nice, just in case Sarah top decks some way to get past something. And also it adds counters to Mommy Nora and makes it a lot more pressure. But that's not happening here. That's interesting.
Zoe putting pressure on and going base instead here draws another mountain, something you don't want to see if you're mono red. But Kamano flips back over, providing a blocker now. And speaking of blockers, Soken-san can be played also to serve as a blocker. So again, now Sarah being on the back foot, kind of hitting the awkward situation of instead of going down the middle, now may have to hold back a little bit. Interested to see what happens here. Okay, so here is the top 5 cards that you were talking about here, Kuro. So what are you hoping to see if you're Sarah seeing these 5 cards off the top? What is going to be the deal breaker here? Maybe not 5 here, going for the token instead to see less.
Yep, that makes sense. Was that 4 mountains?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my.
Tonight,
No.
I tend as a professional commentator here to not want to talk about the shuffler, but you gotta admit the shuffler's had a little bit of sass to it tonight. Some sass.
True. A little bit of sass. A little bit. A little, like, marginal 5% sass.
Yeah. And
That
even
was
Sarah, you gotta love the attitude that she provides there with the nice. Thank you, Sarah. Saying what's on everybody's mind right now here. We appreciate that. Farmhand off the top here. We have a plains. And again, that farmhand right now is actually huge. Why is that the case, Kuro?
because it has lifelink now,
Yeah.
which is a fantastic blocker. And I would really, really, really want to flip this battle just so that we have the additional hexproof, but it's still not happening. That's okay. I will continue to say it, but it's fine. Anyway, that having a lifelink is very important, and I will also say, just really quickly, that the fact that those lands were exiled is actually not that bad because it means that the likelihood of drawing land later is pretty low, compared to, like, earlier in the game. So, it's not that horrible, it just means that you don't get to draw anything. That's cool, I guess.
I just want to say this is mono red and we're still in game one. I want everybody watching to recognize this, okay?
Yeah.
We are in game one and this is mono red. You can't help but feel like maybe Zoe might be doing the job right there. And there's another card that's really interesting. If we could
Mm.
have a zoom in feature, I would. Furnace Punisher here, which Lay Down Arms is taken care of. That card can be absolutely devastating in the right scenario. Not necessarily right here, but it's something that folks should keep an eye on should they go against mono red.
Ooh, attacking with this token is very ambitious, actually, because now this is a problem. If that token bashes in and Zoe doesn't gain enough life, Sarah could potentially just activate the stuff and attack back. And here's this. That token
Interesting.
can't block anymore. That could
Hmm.
be a huge problem. Oh,
All right. So again, we are landlocked, so to speak, in every sense of the word here. So again, kind of an awkward situation for both players. So again, oh, that is a
mm,
wedding announcement. That is a big, big draw for Zoe. Wow. So now the reason why this is big is this could be lead to more draws. Right now, card advantage. Card advantage is the single most important thing here. As we are again shockingly deep in game number one, Sarah going down to two, and again, I can't tell which one is the aggressor at this point. I mean, I'm seeing mono red on the back foot here and very confused, but that is a thundering Raju off the top for Sarah. So much back and forth here. Is that going to mean anything for the game ultimately? No. Elish Norn 5-8, turns out 8 toughness is a lot, is going to settle game number one. GG to Zoe. What a wild game, Kuro.
absolutely. I think once Zoe was at 7 and wasn't getting attacked or hit anymore, that was when Mono White was able to get that back. Landing Mommy Norn is a big one. Landing the farmhand and flipping it immediately, that is super, super, super clutch. They definitely did a lot of work, and those cards really worked together to make it work.
Absolutely. And again, we're just seeing some pretty big name cards here in both the main and the sideboard here. We have Kaya. You know, nobody sees Kaya coming until it's too late. Again, the Elishnorn staying in, did a great job. Sunfall staying in. For wedding announcement, Celestius, there's quite a bit of life gain here. Something that you kind of think about, but you don't consider until all of a sudden that life gain just kind of stacks up.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards. The cool thing about playing with mono red is that a lot of cards are just really obviously bad. Sliding in Mommy Norn, I wouldn't hate at all. I don't know. I don't know. If well, Kaya Plus is actually pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Duress could even be theoretically good because there's just so much non-creature stuff that you could want. Um,
I will tell y'all now, unless you're playing against a deck with board wipes, Sanctuary Warden is a really terrifying card, even for mono
Mhm.
red. You don't think that's a problem until you're staring at one. I'm just saying, you heard it here from me. Just kind of consider Sanctuary Warden when making your decisions this week.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if I would sign out the Furnace Punishers. Not sure how useful they are here. There's a lot of basic lands in Zoe's deck, so there's no reason to get that extra effect. And a 3/3 Menace is kind of okay. I'm not quite sure how useful it is, but getting the extra counter on it with the Kakazan could be helpful. I would just tempted.
So I think it is rather obvious that Mono Red right now, at least taking a look at the sideboard here, is very much prepared for Shieldred. That
Mhm.
is what the side deck is just looking to me is like, I don't want to run into Shieldred. I don't want to deal with Shieldred. I mean, that is the reason why I personally have been afraid to play Mono Red for so long. Shieldred is just so devastating if you don't have an immediate answer normally. uh
Mhm.
Complicate that against mono red where you're supposed to get the opponent down by all means and as quickly as possible. Again, kind of scary here. So speaking of kind of frightening here, Zoe here seeing just two very difficult to deal with hands here. This one might be worth keeping because of the farm hand here. Gonna be tough to keep. Meanwhile, Sarah's hand, gas, very much gas going first. If you're Zoe here, how much do you consider keeping this?
Oh, it's so hard. If you
It is.
draw a land, you're fine. But if you don't
Oh,
draw a land, you just lose.
yeah. I mean, we've seen a lot of players lately across all different kinds of leagues and tournaments take one landers. And it's always like so tempting, right? But it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're for this person here. Be careful with taking one land. That's all I'm going to say. Zoe here, mulliganing again, now getting a ton of at least the lands that gain life, which is great considering if lived long enough, the Sarah Paragon can keep gaining life over and over. So interesting, but can Zoe outlast all the barrage of damage that's about to hit Kuro?
Ooh, this ossification is actually going to help, but it's an awkward situation because now Zoe has to decide: do I Ganjo this turn or next turn, or do I ossification this turn? However, there is a very cool thing where Iganjo can discard the ossification and then bring it back. So maybe Zoe is thinking about doing that in the long run. It could work, but it could also be very disastrous because if Sarah burns her out before that happens, game is just over.
Sarah playing with fire here to get the top, likes the top. Oh, of course, it had to be Kamano Faces Kakazan, right? Sarah was talking about how much she loves Kamano Faces Kakazan here. So that doesn't surprise me here in the slightest here. In game number 2, down the middle, Zoe already at 12. Again, if you blink, you may have missed all that life loss there. So now, I believe is going to be the move that Kura was talking about. However, it could be a little more complicated here because Wandering Emperor is in the hand. There's a lot of different avenues here. How do you decide, Kuro, which one is going to work the best given the current board state?
I guess you have to think a little bit about what you're going to be removing with this ossification. If you're removing a Phoenix Chick, then that's 2 damage that you're basically keeping away. If it was used last turn on the Phoenix Chick, we would have saved 2 more damage, which could have been the difference between a win and a loss, depending on what cards are drawn. It was definitely. I really thought that Zoe was going to go for Iganjo because of that tap land play, but I guess it didn't happen. That's fine. This Emperor is going to be really nice though, so
Ooh.
Zoe's setting up for that specifically. I think that's why Zoe played that third tap land.
Ooh,
Um,
talk about tough. The Monastery Swift Spear off the top, down the middle.
yeah,
Zoe's down to 2, and that is a Sunfall, but it's most likely one turn too late.
yeah, and this is really what's hurting is that that extra 2 damage could have mattered a lot. If Zoe was at 4 and not 2 right now, that could matter. Yeah, it definitely would have mattered for sure. Because then Sarah Paragon could come in, get the land back, sack it. That's 3 life gained, which is pretty great.
Yeah, this one is pretty much a done deal for Sarah here. So again, Sarah gonna play, or Zoe's sorry, going to play the Wandering Emperor here, but that's still not enough. That's going to be exact change here for lethal.
Yep, that is rough.
As we go into game number 3, this is anyone's game. This is absolutely amazing. Again, you would think that it would be lopsided in one direction or the other, but if we think about that first game, do we expect to see a game 3 that's like this, especially with Zoe going first? I mean,
It's
you have to think.
Yeah, I wonder how much it would have been feasible to keep that hand that had the one lander in it, because
Mhm.
unlike normal one landers where you have to draw and draw and draw, there were mechanisms to draw planes every single turn that wouldn't have made it as horrible. Um, woulda, coulda, shoulda, I guess, but it's just interesting to think about. This next game will probably be a little bit better.
I just want to go for the record, and this is for the mental health of everyone playing this game and watching in chat. Do your best, no matter what the result is. Try not to think about the what ifs, because remember,
Yeah,
you could have
true,
drawn no
true.
lands. Like that is entirely the thing that happens. Like don't be hard on yourself. This is a very hard game with difficult decisions. So again, just do your best and give it your all, and you can't be disappointed in yourself.
You're absolutely correct.
All
I'm
right,
just
so
yeah, I'm
look
just
at
spinning
his
wheels.
hands.
Oh
Wow.
my
And
god.
there's Elish Norn again. What a pair of hands.
Hmm.
It looks like we're going to have a loaded game here in game 3. Well, what are we thinking overall, Kuro?
Zoe needs an untapped land for sure.
Mhm.
Sarah needs to get those creatures on the battlefield first before anything else happens. If Zoe does not get an untapped land, she is going to suffer because not having those 3 drops in turn 3 will be really, really bad. But if she does get the 3 land, that plains, that top deck plains, it's going to be so, so good.
All right, Zoe. Oh,
Nice.
there's an untapped land. That is exactly what you were talking about, Kuro. That is very
Yeah.
big right now if you're Zoe.
So good. That is going to be so good for Zoe. Turn 3 announcement, turn 4 restoration, or vice versa, either of which is fine. This is really good for Zoe right now.
All
Sarah
right.
Paragon coming in later. Oh my god. Amazing.
Felden for Sarah, though. Oh, and that is another. I believe that is an untapped land. No, it isn't. Hang on, I'm
It
trying to
is
see under. Is that a
caves.
caves?
It is caves, yes. Caves
Okay,
of Cola.
okay. Sometimes it's hard to tell underneath there. So Caves of Coleos here, another big draw for Zoe. Again, that tower could be used as a cycle instead coming up soon because again, there's a lot that can be done on 3 and 4 mana. Now it's just a matter of if you're Zoe, how do you make the most efficient use of these turns and how does that efficiency help you survive to your bigger drops? Because again, at this point, Elish Nord is probably going to be the ceiling you're going for. Did the job pretty well in game 1, didn't it?
Absolutely. And I think I probably would have done a Ganja there first, but honestly, whichever one you do first, it doesn't really matter because you're trying to get them to flip. And announcement does get out the anthem earlier, which is always obviously very useful. Walking Feldon is
Ooh.
um
Interesting move
I
here. Blocking the Feldon. Again, every damage matters here, so that does make sense. However, that is to Sarah's delight as, well, Furnish Punisher first comes down. Again, doesn't do much here. We were talking about this earlier, just because there's so many basic lines. That is a Wandering Emperor that just got drawn for Zoe. Holy moly. That is quite the draw, considering how much ammunition is on the field right now for Sarah.
I will say that Wandering Emperor is much better here in this game than it was in the last game when it was played. For sure. It's so much better. Is so much better. And Sarah Paragon coming in next turn as a follow-up is just backbreaking. That's so much life gained for basically no cost.
All right, Phoenix check out onto the field right now. And again, just bunch of direct damage, some scries in the hand. And here comes Wandering Emperor. Probably will not live past the -2, but the -2 right now is all that Zoe's looking for right now. Not only will that destroy what will likely be the Furnished Punisher or the Felden, but it's also going to be +2 life right now. And -2. Okay, y'all using your calculators here, right? And possibly going to be getting rid of a spell that would normally go to the face. Again, thinking about how do you survive against mono red. This is one way to do it. Zoe again going for the block here against Felden. One draw here, and that is an adversary that is in the exile zone that again I believe can be played up till the end of the next turn. Play with fire to the face of the Wandering Emperor, and Sarah
So I
doing
don't
a think here. Oh, good,
I don't
good.
I don't see a reason to block the Feldon with the 1/1 when it's gonna flip into a 2/2 next turn and giving Sarah more cards to work with. Because you are not taking the 2 damage, but if Sarah gets an extra card, you're offsetting that not taking 2 damage with the fact that Sarah's getting another threat. I am finding this play a little confusing because I think it would have been better to just have a 2/2 to potentially get rid of the Feldon at a later time. This announcement's gonna flip, and so Sarah Zoe's gonna be able to get that value. Zoe is protecting her life total, but I think she's doing it a bit too much in a way that is not as efficient as it could be.
All right, so Sarah Paragon will likely die here, but also we've had one, but what about second Sarah Paragon coming up? What would likely be the next turn?
There you go, and that's more life gained, back up to 20.
That
Real
life
simple.
gain adds up quickly with the
It's
Paragon and the storefront. Again, doesn't look like much, but when you are trying to get life, whether it is from Shieldred, you're trying to drain them that way, or drain with direct damage here from red spells, that is just so devastating to have to deal with life gain after life gain after life gain.
absolutely. This announcement flips, so now Mommy Nord is now a 5/8 as per last game. This token's dead. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, play with fire here, hitting the token. And again, this is going to allow Sarah to be able to go down the middle a bit. We have the barrage
Yep.
for Paragon number 1, we'll call it at this point. Land down and going to go for the Bloodthirsty Adversary here. Makes sense because that disappears after next turn. And going on in, trying to reduce some of that damage. Down to 14 for Zoe. which doesn't seem like much this deep in the game. That is how much damage was recovered using the Paragon in the field. So now Zoe's in a position. You can plug up the field, you can Alganjo and kind of multiply your mana that way. There's a lot right now that Zoe has available just because there's so much life that is here. What are you thinking, Kuro? What is possibly some of the best use right now? Does Zoe want to gain more life? Does Zoe want to gunk up the field? There's a lot going on here.
Zoe does want to gain the life, I think, but Mummy Nord is probably the best play here just because it's so hard to kill. It
Hmm.
it forces Sarah to start sacrificing creatures if she wants to get in with damage. The strike is probably going to hit the face, yeah. And
Hmm.
so now Zoe is now racing against the clock. If Zoe lives this turn and can land a Sarah Paragon, that's just perfect. If Sarah plays this creature, the Mishra's Foundry cannot activate. If Sarah attacks with the Feldon, then Mommy Norn blocks, exile 5 cards, potentially get 5 lands, and then be sad. that's it. That's a joke. That's a joke.
No. I get you.
Sarah is
First
probably
Punisher though, be the draw here. So again, all Sarah can do at this point is to just keep going down the middle.
yep. That
That
is
is
I like that play a lot. I think it's you have to do it. You have to push because otherwise you have to wait.
that
Oh,
is a second Wandering Emperor. My goodness! But as you were saying before, Crow, the Sarah Paragon play too tempting, right? Like it's that good.
you get to gain 3 life. You get to get another land out. It's pretty good. Um, Now you get double trigger, which is fine. So you actually get another life, which is actually pretty cool. But you have to sacrifice it twice, so that it doesn't actually get you 2 lands, I think.
Wow.
Unless that does no, yeah, just kidding. Okay, yeah. You only gain the 1 life.
Zoe
And
likely
then
gonna go down the middle here. Vigilance, yeah.
vigilance means there's no cost. That's pretty awesome. Next turn, restoration of Aganjo is coming down probably.
That is
Silkenzon's
a Sokenzan.
fine draw. Not amazing. Not the worst. It's extra creatures. It's not a land at least, but it's bad.
All right, so Silken's on off the top. We have that's this is gonna be a tolerant, and I just want to note. I want to note Sarah has done so much damage to Zoe this turn. The life gain doesn't not this turn, this game in general. The life gain, it doesn't look that way, but the life gain negates that. So it's my goodness, just so much life gain if you're Zoe.
Absolutely.
All right, Soken's on. And down the middle again, because again, as stated before, that is all that Sarah can do at this point.
At this point, you have to start picking off the non-Phoenix creatures because every Phoenix if the Phoenix lives for too long, oh no, if you have too many creatures, you're letting the Phoenix basically come back for free. This is I would have definitely blocked the spirits there. You kind of have to deal with them on some level, otherwise they're going to also allow for the Phoenix trick to come back, which is a huge problem.
Yeah, again, all this life gain, but there's still only 10 life left for Zoe. Again, this mono red is very wide right now. And speaking of which, this game is wide open by extension, very much still. So again, there's so much going on. So how much would this be? 4, 5, 6 damage still if that block were to take place that way. Zoe going for the Furnace Punisher block instead, because again, Felden can draw cards. So
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I like this. You want to force Sarah to have to draw into the things rather than allowing it. Oh, Celeste is back.
Oh, a Celeste is off the top. Now that is quite the draw here if you're Zoe. So again, Wandering Emperor is going to spare no expense most likely next turn. But now again, there are some choices to be made, and that's putting it very lightly if you're Zoe here. Deep in game number 3, I cannot believe just all the twists and turns that this battle has taken so far. Zoe considering playing the Wandering Emperor and will play the Wandering Emperor here at sorcery speed. What do you think of this?
I can't get. I'm just getting over your Jurassic Park reference. Anyway, that's a pretty good. It's a pretty good play. I would probably have waited until their turn anyway, because if you wait till Sarah's turn, then you play around the idea that Sarah potentially draws a second Feldon, because it is legendary. And so if it attacks in you Wandering Emperor, you make sure that Feldon can't get in. You block 2 other things. But if Sarah top decks a Feldon, then that is a thing that Zoe has to now deal with. Versus, so there is that minor hedge there. We'll see if it matters at all, because if Sarah doesn't draw Feldon, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
But if she does,
this is
it does.
tight right now, 10-6. Oh my goodness. The top from Sarah. That is a play with fire off the top. That is the plot thickens even further here. And remember, there is that animated land that Kuro was talking about earlier, the Foundry. So now, yet again, there are decisions to be made. And now there is no response. There is a singular mana. Possibly, I guess, cut down could be a thing if you're Sarah thinking about all the things that could happen here. But at this point, it is possible that Sarah just may have to go for it here.
This is exactly 5 damage coming through. That's wow. That is amazing. And then if everything attacks, Zoe can just crack back for exactly 10.
Wow.
That's amazing. So Sarah, therefore, cannot attack with everything, because if Sarah attacks with literally everything, then Zoe can win the game immediately. But however, that 1/1 is going to die, and that Foundry is going to die. Oh man, this is so tight.
This is tense. This is
Yes.
very, very, very tense. And again, there's not necessarily a right or wrong play here, folks. Remember, we have complete knowledge of what's going on here. So each player is doing the best possible to assess plays again. This is just a very, very difficult situation for both players to be in.
Absolutely. Sarah has to assume that Zoe is going to block a Foundry and a Chick, which means that Zoe will go down to 4. Or a Foundry and a token, I guess. I would block a. Oh no, I guess you don't block a Chick here. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, okay, you take 2. You go to 4. Play with Fire will then take Zoe to 2, which is of
Wow.
course that's good.
All right, this is an additional life here. This is an additional life for
Yes.
Zoe off of the Celestis here. Discarding the planes, more than likely, yes, as the tower can be. And that is, that's a tough one, right? Because you're giving Sarah more life that way.
Yeah.
Tough scenario here. Zoe contemplating just maybe activating the Celestis here. You gain an extra life. Every life counts here. And we'll see what happens.
Worst comes to worst, you discard the cycle land that you're paying 3 mana to. Oh, there's a storm.
Oh, I think that's the biggest reaction I've ever had to a tap fetch land in a while here. At least in standard, right? Because we haven't had fetch lands. That is an Obscura storefront here, and that's gonna be big gains here. Big gains here off the Sarah Paragon. Wow. That just might have been what Zoe needed to seal this game up. We'll see what happens here, but that is huge.
It's huge. So a free healing salve. That's pretty cool. Awesome. Epic. Yeah, and then this Celestis could theoretically still flip again on the next turn, but that play with fire is looking so extremely sad. Sarah's thinking maybe I should have killed the Wandering Emperor just in case. Doesn't matter though. The cool thing about lay down arms gaining life is that for Sarah, if Zoe gains life, that's very problematic because Sarah's using cards to do the damage. But Zoe's damage is coming from creatures, and so those extra 3 life is just 1 extra turn of attacking and doesn't do anything for card advantage. So it's absolutely fine.
All right, down the middle here for Zoe, contemplating the Paragon. There is contemplating here, but Zoe wanting to leave less and less to chance here. And Sarah as well. Sarah's like, okay, you gave me that life. I might as well keep my spirit on the board. And Zoe going to play Alganjo.
Ganja's pretty good here. It's just a little extra. I don't think it's necessary to win, but it's cool to have.
Play with fire to the face to scribe. We can't see. The suspense is here. We won't know. That is a thundering Raiju on top. Wow.
Oh yikes!
That's tough.
If that was in the hand like 3 turns ago, 2 turns ago, it probably would have been much more exciting. Unfortunately, right now it's just getting bricked by Mommy Norn.
Yeah, I mean, what do you even look for here if you're Sarah?
I can't think of anything in the list. I don't think there's any of those active treason cards. Funnily enough, active treason here might actually be like extremely good, but that's just not an option.
That's not terrible, the Foundry, but it's not likely going to be enough as Zoe wins game number 3. Wow. So again, just
There it is.
the storefront. It was the storefront. Like, how much life did that gain over the course of that game? Just fantastic.
It felt like about like 6 to 9 life for sure. And the thing is when you gain 3 life, you're countering a lightning strike, which is fantastic. If you gain 3 life, you're countering a single chick attack plus a play with fire, which is great. You're using a land to get card advantage for absolutely basically no cost, other than tap lands, of course. That's the cost, but it's still good.
Anyways, I wanted to say GG to both players yet again. These were 4 excellent games this week. This was quite a treat for our viewers. Now, speaking of which, Kuro, I want to thank you for casting with me tonight. It has been an absolute blast. I've had a great time. So, folks, Kuro will let you know, how can we find you, Kuro, on the internet?
I'm actually pretty clandestine on the internet, to be honest, but I am on Discord a lot, so drop me a line. It's all good.
Absolutely. And you can find me at twitch.tv/Skybilz. I stream a combination of challenge runs, speed runs, Magic the Gathering. Courtesy of Wizards next week, there's going to be the Lord of the Rings event that Wizards has given me. So again, I want to thank Wizards so much for that opportunity. And I believe VML also usually gets that opportunity. We may be seeing streamers here from the VML do that. So again, I do want to thank VML for allowing us to just showcase all of the fantastic Lord of the Rings stuff, and also to Wizards again for those early access accounts. Thank you. And speaking of thanking Wizards, we want to thank our sponsors, Wizards of the Coast here, GLHF, that is good luck, high five. Phoebe, of course. Phoebe does so much for us behind the scenes. Phoebe, we love you
Actually,
so much.
well, I'm glad that I'm able to help you guys out, and it's just occurred to me that with the Lord of the Rings set, um, they kind of now have wizards and a coast, especially if you have like the what Talarian coastline or something, and you put
I
Gandalf there. There you go. Wizards
guess it's cool.
coast. Lame joke for the week accomplished.
Very good
Thank you,
jokes.
Phoebe.
5
Phoebe,
out
we
of 10.
love you. Thank you so much for everything. Of course, our wonderful admin team also. Again, so much work being done behind the scenes. The casters, which is us, and of course, all of the other wonderful casters we have. The players, again, it's so difficult to go out there and give it your all. Again, there's just Magic is a hard game, so we want to thank all the players for being awesome tonight. And of course, you all, the viewers, we would not be here if it wasn't y'all. So thank you so much. That wraps up our broadcast for this week. Thanks to Kuro, my broadcasting friend, partner in crime. Appreciate you so much. And again, just thank you so much for being here. We will see you next week for week 5 of season 10 of the VML. Have a good evening, everyone.